Okay, so, you guys have sent in some really interesting stuff lately.
Yeah.
Like a ton of material.
Yeah.
Really focused on like the whole science of confidence thing.
Yeah.
And we want to like try to like get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
Really extract the core insights from all that stuff and
Yeah, absolutely.
really give you guys the most useful takeaways, the things you can really use
Practical stuff, right?
to kind of, amp up your own self-belief.
Right. We're going way beyond just like think positive,
right.
This article really digs into like the actual, these psychological and neurological mechanisms that actually like create confidence.
Right.
It's really about understanding how this stuff works.
Yeah.
Like the nuts and bolts of, believing in yourself.
So like right off the bat, the article gives us a really solid, foundation. Forget the image of like, some like puffed up braggy
person.
Totally.
Not what we're talking about.
True confidence is like, they define it, is this realistic trust in your own abilities. Absolutely. Your resilience and your, inherent worth.
Yeah. And they make this really interesting distinction between self-confidence, which is that like overall, sense of like, I'm good, I'm cool.
I got this.
And then self-efficacy, which is more about your confidence in specific tasks.
Oh, that's a good distinction.
Right.
Because you might feel confident overall.
Totally.
But
then when it comes to like public speaking or
whatever,
certain things,
specific area.
Yeah, you're like,
oh,
nope, not that one.
Right.
And
and then also the other way around too.
Yeah.
Like you might be like, really good at something.
Super skilled at something. Like I'm a killer artist.
Yeah, but just in general,
Right. You feel great about yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's interesting because they make this point that this isn't just like a fixed state.
Right.
Like you're either confident or you're not.
You're not just born
with
it or without it.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
It's like a personality setting.
Yeah. And they talk about, there was this 2018 study that linked self-confidence to like, how emotionally stable you are.
Okay.
If you're more like outgoing and extroverted.
Right.
But it also like made it clear that your experiences make a huge difference.
Yep.
Like the support you get past successes.
Right.
It's like this interplay between what's going on inside you and like what you encounter in the world.
So it's
like
dynamic.
Right.
It's not just
it's not set in stone.
Yeah. You can change it.
Which is a good thing.
Right. That's the exciting part.
Yes, very good.
Oh, yeah.
So like our mission here for this deep dive is to really like
let's get under the hood.
Yeah, get under the hood
of this whole science.
Yeah.
And figure out what are the things people can actually do to like build that confidence muscle.
So where do we start with this, scientific exploration?
So the article starts off with the psychology of confidence.
Okay.
And they bring up this guy, Albert Bandura.
Okay. Yeah.
He's like a big name in psychology.
Right.
And he came up with this idea of self-efficacy.
Yeah.
Which is like a real driver of motivation and behavior.
Yeah.
And he basically said there are these 4 key sources that fuel self-efficacy.
Okay, so this is like...
And they're really insightful. Like you can really use these to understand how to build your own confidence.
So the first one?
The first one is called mastery experiences.
Yeah. Okay, so that's like,
So basically when you achieve something, even if it seems small, your brain's like, hey, you did it. Like it lays down this little marker that says you can do this.
Like a mental cali.
Yes, it's like you're leveling up in a video game.
I like that.
Right? Like every time you succeed, you get these experience points.
Right.
And it all adds up
yeah,
to this confidence score.
So not
for that particular thing.
Yeah. Like making huge leaps.
Exactly.
It's the accumulation.
It's the small wins that add up over time.
Yeah.
So your brain's like, hey,
you can do this.
Look at all this evidence.
This track record.
Right. I'm competent.
Yeah.
I can do this.
Okay, what's the second one?
So the second one's called vicarious learning.
Okay. So that's like...
which is basically...
watching other people.
Yeah. Looking at people who are like you.
Right.
And seeing them succeed.
Right. And thinking, if they can do it...
exactly.
I can do it.
It's like, if they could figure that out...
yeah.
Maybe I have that in me too.
Totally. So like role models are important.
Super important.
Right.
Because when you see someone...
yeah.
doing something you want to do...
yeah.
and succeeding...
right.
makes it feel more real.
Right. Less abstract.
Right. It's not just this abstract idea.
Right.
It's like, oh,
real person.
A real person did this.
Did it.
So I can too.
Okay, so number 3.
Number 3 is social persuasion.
Okay, so this is all about...
Which is basically the power of encouragement.
Right, like people telling you you can do it.
Right, when someone you respect looks you in the eye and says, I believe in you.
Yeah.
You got this.
I know you can do this.
It can be huge.
Yeah, especially when you're feeling doubtful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the article makes this point that has to be genuine.
Right.
Like empty praise.
Yeah, just like...
Doesn't really land.
You're awesome.
Right.
It's got to be specific.
Yeah, it has to be sincere.
Right.
Like acknowledging your effort.
Right.
Highlighting your skills.
It's so important.
It's way more powerful.
Okay, number 4.
Number 4 is emotional and physiological states.
Okay, this is interesting.
This is the one people often miss.
Yeah.
How you feel in your body. And emotionally has a huge impact on your confidence.
If you're like super anxious.
Right, if you're feeling overwhelmed.
Or just like exhausted.
Drained.
Yeah.
It's hard to feel confident.
Right.
But if you're calm, if you have energy, you're like, yeah, I can handle this.
Like your body's on board.
Right.
It's amazing how connected
it's all kind of
the physical and mental are.
Totally.
So we've got,
So that's the psychology.
Yeah, psychology, yeah.
But then they go into the neuroscience.
Oh, this is where it gets really cool.
Yeah, this is where it gets really fascinating.
Yeah, because it's not just like a feeling.
It's not just some fleeting feeling.
Right.
It's actually like
wired into your brain. Yeah.
They talk about the prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
Which is like that part right behind your forehead. That's like the CEO of your brain.
Okay.
Making decisions, planning.
Right.
And apparently there was this 2016 study in Nature Communications that showed that this part of your brain is constantly like taking in information about your past experiences, your current situation, and it's making this like real-time prediction about whether you're going to succeed or not.
That's so cool.
Right. So when you feel that surge of confidence, it's like your prefrontal cortex is giving you a thumbs up.
It's like, you got this.
Based on the data.
Yeah.
You're good.
Okay.
And then there's dopamine.
Oh, yeah.
The reward chemical.
The brain's like happy juice.
Right. And the article talks about how when you experience success or even anticipate it, your brain releases dopamine.
It's like a little reward.
Right. It feels good.
It feels good. Yeah. And it reinforces those behaviors.
Makes you want to do it again.
Exactly. So you're more likely to do the things that led to that success.
Right.
And there was this 2020 study that actually showed that people who have higher baseline levels of dopamine report feeling more confident.
Oh, wow.
So it's like there might even be
interesting
a biological predisposition to confidence.
So like,
But the key takeaway here is those moments of success trigger that dopamine and build confidence.
So even like small goals.
Absolutely. Like intentionally setting small achievable goals and hitting them triggers that reward system.
That's awesome.
Right.
Okay, so now for like the flip side.
Right. So then there's the amygdala.
The amygdala.
Which is like the fear center of your brain.
Right. And the article talks about how an overactive amygdala can really mess with your confidence.
Yeah.
Because it's like super sensitive to uncertainty, the threat of failure.
Oh, total.
And it triggers that stress response.
Right.
Like heart racing, sweaty palms.
Yeah.
That feeling.
Kind of like fight or flight.
Yeah. And that can really erode your confidence in the moment.
Sense. Right.
But the cool thing is, the brain can change.
The brain is plastic.
Yeah.
It can rewire itself.
Yeah.
And this is called neuroplasticity.
Right.
So even if your amygdala is like super sensitive, you can train it to chill out.
Over time.
And it's like through practice.
Yeah, like learning a new skill.
Right.
The more you do it,
the
stronger those pathways become.
The more confident you become.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And then they bring in hormones.
Okay.
Which adds another layer to this whole biology of confidence thing.
Okay.
They talk about testosterone and how it's linked to assertiveness.
Right.
And go do this.
Yeah.
Acting confident can actually increase testosterone.
Like a feedback loop.
Yeah, it's like this positive feedback loop.
That's wild.
So even like standing up straight can make you feel more confident.
Let's up. I'm going to try that.
Right.
Okay.
And then there's cortisol.
Cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Right.
And that one seems to have the opposite effect.
Right. It
undermines confidence.
Taps away at it.
Yeah. And there was this study in 2019
okay.
that found that a balanced ratio of testosterone to cortisol was linked to higher confidence.
Interesting.
So it's this whole dance between brain activity and hormones. It's all connected.
So it's not just an abstract thing.
It's not just in your head.
Right. It's like a real biological thing.
Yeah.
So cool. Okay, but then
the article shifts gears.
Yeah.
And it looks at why some people struggle with confidence.
Even though we all have these mechanisms.
Exactly. So they talk about this idea of the confidence gap.
Okay. The confidence gap.
And they go into all these factors that can contribute to it.
Like what?
So one of the biggest ones is childhood.
Oh, yeah.
Early experiences.
Totally.
Like the kind of feedback you got growing up can have a huge impact.
Yeah.
They talk about praise.
Yeah.
And how important it is to praise effort.
Right.
And the process of learning.
And you worked really hard on that.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Not you're so smart.
Right. Because when you praise effort, you're teaching kids that their abilities can grow, that they can get better.
It's like that growth mindset stuff.
Right, exactly, like Carol Dweck's work.
Right.
But when you criticize too much,
or
you don't give enough positive reinforcement,
it can create self-doubt.
That can linger.
That can last for years.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
So that distinction between praising effort versus praising innate talent is so important.
Yeah.
Because when you acknowledge hard work, you're teaching them that they can develop their skills.
Right.
But when you just praise talent, it creates this fear of failure.
Right.
Because if they make a mistake, it means they're not talented anymore.
Right.
Right.
So scary.
Yeah.
Okay. They also talk about
societal factors, like gender and culture.
Yeah.
So there's this article in 2014 that showed that women, on average, tend to underestimate their abilities compared to men.
Yeah. And it's not
that they're not capable.
Right.
It's more about societal expectations and biases.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's culture.
Right.
Like some cultures value humility more than overt confidence.
Right. You're not supposed to brag.
You're not supposed to stand out.
Yeah, so it's
So it's not just you.
Right.
It's also the world around you.
Totally.
That shapes your confidence.
Makes sense.
Okay, what else?
They also talk about perfectionism.
Perfectionism?
Yeah. This drive to be flawless can actually backfire.
Right.
Because you're so afraid of making a mistake that you don't even try.
You're paralyzed.
Right. And there was a study in 2021 that linked perfectionism to lower self-confidence.
That makes
because if your standards are impossibly high, you're always going to feel like you're failing.
Right.
Right?
So you never get that.
You never feel good enough.
That boost.
Right.
Okay.
And then, of course, there's imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. Yeah. Everyone's favorite.
Right. Feeling like a fraud.
Even though
you have all this evidence.
You've achieved things that you're actually good.
Right.
Right? It's like your brain can't accept it.
It's crazy.
It was first identified in 1978.
Oh, wow.
And it affects so many people.
Yeah, even
super successful people.
Really successful people.
Right? It's like they can't internalize their success.
Wow.
It's really powerful.
Yeah, it shows how strong our inner narratives are.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about the psychology, the neuroscience,
the biology,
the reasons people struggle.
Yeah.
Now what can we actually do about it?
Right. Let's get to the tools.
The toolkit.
The confidence building toolkit.
Yeah.
So the article outlines all these practical strategies that are based on science.
Let's hear it.
So the first one is start small and stack wins.
Oh, okay. I like that.
It's about setting achievable goals.
Yeah.
Even if they seem tiny.
Right.
Because each small win gives you a little confidence boost.
Right.
And it starts to rewire your brain to expect more success.
It's like building momentum.
Right. And there was this study in 2017 that showed that gradual progress is actually more effective than trying to do everything at once.
So it's about consistency.
Yeah, consistency and small steps.
Okay.
So the article suggests making a list of 3 small tasks that you can do today.
Right. Something easy.
Yeah. And it might seem simple.
Yeah.
But just the act of completing something
and
acknowledging it can really shift your mindset.
Yeah.
So think about something you've been wanting to do.
Yeah.
What's one tiny step you can take today
right now
to get started?
Okay, love it.
All right, number 2, reframe failure.
Okay.
So this is about changing how you think about setbacks.
Right.
Instead of seeing them as proof that you're not good enough, you see them as learning opportunities.
Right.
Like, hey, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
They mention Annie Cuddy's work here.
Okay.
And there's a study in 2022 that showed that this kind of reframing can reduce self-criticism and make you more resilient.
It's like turning a negative into a positive.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the article suggests, after a setback, write down one lesson you learned and one step you can take forward.
I like that.
It keeps you moving in a positive direction.
Okay, what's next?
Number 3, harness your body.
Okay.
So this is about Amy Cuddy's power posing.
Power posing.
Yeah.
Okay.
The idea is that adopting these expansive postures, like standing tall, hands on your hips, can influence your hormone levels. Maybe increase testosterone, decrease cortisol.
Right.
And that can make you feel more confident.
Interesting.
Now, there's some debate about the hormones.
Yeah.
But there was a 2023 meta-analysis in the journal Body Image that did find that standing upright can increase self-reported confidence. So even if it's not all about the hormones, just the act of standing tall can make you feel more confident.
It's like embodying confidence.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the article says, try standing tall for 2 minutes before a challenging situation.
Like a little power pose break.
Exactly.
Okay, I like it.
All right, number 4, visualize success.
Visualize success.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is about mental rehearsal. Like picturing yourself succeeding.
Right.
And the idea is that when you do that, you're actually activating the same neural pathways
in your brain
as if you were actually doing it.
Wow.
And there was a 2018 study in Frontiers in Psychology that showed that this kind of mental practice can increase self-efficacy.
So it's like a mental workout.
For confidence.
Right. So how do we do it?
So the article says, take 5 minutes and really visualize yourself succeeding.
Like really see it.
Yeah. All the detail, the sights, the sounds,
the feelings,
the emotions. Create that mental movie.
Awesome.
All right, number 5, curate your circle.
Curate your circle.
Okay. So this is about surrounding yourself with supportive people.
People who believe in you.
Right. People who lift you up.
Right.
And there was a 2020 study in Social Psychology Quarterly that showed that getting positive feedback from your peers can boost your confidence.
Right.
So it's about who you spend your time with.
Yeah.
The article suggests reaching out to someone who believes in you. And asking for their perspective.
That's a good idea.
Right. It's about getting that external validation from someone you trust.
Okay. Love it.
Okay. Number 6, tame the inner critic.
Oh, the inner critic.
Yeah. We all have that voice.
Yes.
That's always telling us we're not good enough.
Right.
So the article talks about CBT. Cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay.
And how it can help you. Identify and challenge those negative thoughts.
Right.
And there was a 2019 study that showed that questioning those thoughts with evidence can build confidence.
So it's like fighting back.
Exactly.
Fact.
Right.
Okay.
So the article suggests making a list of 3 things you've accomplished recently to remind yourself of your successes.
Like a little evidence locker.
Exactly.
Okay, number 7.
Number 7, act as if.
Act as if.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a really interesting one.
Okay.
It's about behaving confidently, even if you don't feel it.
Right.
And the idea is that it can actually change how you see yourself.
So like fake it till you make it?
Kind of, but there's science behind it.
Okay.
There's a 2021 study that showed that acting assertively, like speaking clearly and directly, can increase your own perception of your competence.
So like you trick your brain?
In a way,
into being more confident.
Yeah.
Okay. I like it.
So the article suggests focusing on projecting confidence in your next interaction.
Like a meeting or something.
Yeah, or even just like a conversation with a friend.
Okay, cool.
And finally, number 8, train your brain.
Train your brain.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is about mindfulness and meditation.
Okay.
And how they can help you regulate your emotions.
Right.
Especially that amygdala.
The fear center.
Right. And there was a 2023 study that linked mindfulness to increased confidence.
Wow.
So it's about creating a sense of calm.
Yeah.
And being more aware of your thoughts and feelings.
Right, so you don't get swept away by them.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the article suggests trying a 10-minute guided meditation every day.
That's doable.
Yeah, it's a small investment.
Right.
For big potential benefits.
Okay, so that's a lot of tools.
Right, but the article doesn't stop there.
Okay.
It goes on to talk about how confidence shows up
right.
in the real world.
Okay.
Like in your work, your relationships, your health.
Okay, so you guys have sent in a ton of articles this week, and honestly, they've all got me thinking, really thinking about, all this time we spend online on social media.
Yeah.
Are we, like, actually getting smarter because of it? Or is it, like, secretly making us all a bit, a bit dumber?
It's the big question, isn't it?
It is. I mean, we've got articles here making a case for both sides, looking at how we get information these days, how we learn, even like how our brains are literally wired.
Yeah, all of that's in play here.
So today we're going to dig into all of this. We're going to pull out the really important stuff from these articles and hopefully, help you guys understand this whole social media thing a little bit better.
Absolutely. I mean, the sources you sent, they paint a pretty fascinating picture. They go deep into how social media is shaping how we think, how we learn, even, like you said, the way our brains function. There are no easy answers here.
Yeah.
But by taking a good look at all these different angles, I think we can get a much clearer picture. So, let's jump in.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so first up, let's tackle the arguments saying social media could actually be making us smarter. One of the biggest points that keeps popping up in these articles is this idea of access to information. Like, think about it. Twitter, Facebook, even Reddit, they're constantly throwing news at us, research findings, all sorts of educational stuff, and it's all happening in real time.
Right.
It's a completely different world from how things used to be, waiting for the newspaper or the evening news.
Oh, absolutely. It's like night and day. What social media has done is it's leveled the playing field when it comes to knowledge. We used to rely on these gatekeepers, universities, publishers, big media companies.
Right.
They control the flow of information. But now with platforms like YouTube, LinkedIn Learning, anyone can teach, anyone can learn on practically any topic you can imagine.
Totally. And you know what else is interesting? It's not just about passively absorbing all this information. Some of these articles argue that social media is actually pushing us to think more critically.
Yeah.
Like when you're constantly seeing different opinions on platforms like Quora or Reddit, even getting into those heated online debates, it forces you to sharpen your analytical skills.
It's true. You're forced to confront different viewpoints, and that can be uncomfortable. But it also pushes you to examine your own beliefs.
Right.
You start to question why you believe what you believe, and you look for evidence to support your arguments. That constant back and forth, that intellectual friction, can really strengthen your critical thinking muscles.
And we can't forget about citizen journalism and social movement.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Social media has given a voice to people who were often silenced in the past. It's allowed them to challenge official narratives, hold powerful institutions accountable.
Yeah.
It's forced us to think more critically about the information we're consuming, to question who's telling the story and why.
Another point that articles bring up that I thought was really fascinating is this idea that social media might actually be improving our communication skills. Now, I know that might sound kind of counterintuitive, right?
Okay.
Given how short and sometimes kind of superficial online interactions can be.
Right.
But think about it. On apps like WhatsApp, Discord, even when you're blogging on Medium or Substack, you're constantly writing, trying to express your thoughts clearly and concisely.
That's a great point. It's like a constant writing workshop. You're getting feedback, you're refining your arguments, you're learning how to connect with your audience. And those character limits on some platforms, they actually force you to be more creative with your language, to think carefully about every word you choose. It's a different kind of literacy, but it's definitely valuable in today's world.
Absolutely. Okay, and finally, on the social media makes you smarter side of things, the articles point to it being a powerful tool for learning. I mean, we've got educational influencers with huge followings.
Yeah.
Institutions like Coursera, ADX, Khan Academy, offering incredible free resources online. And the way teachers and students are connecting in virtual spaces, it's opening up all these new possibilities for education.
It's really incredible. Social media has made education more accessible than ever before. You can learn from experts all over the world, connect with other learners, and get personalized feedback. And the best part is, a lot of these resources are completely free.
It's pretty amazing. Okay, so We've talked about the potential benefits of social media, but now we got to flip the script and look at the arguments suggesting it might actually be making us less intelligent.
Right.
And honestly, some of this stuff is a bit worrying when you start thinking about your own habits. So the first big point is this idea of shortened attention spans. The sources are basically saying that this constant stream of notifications, these bite-sized videos and posts, all this instant gratification, it's actually rewiring our brains, making it harder for us to focus, to do deep reading, to really engage with complex ideas. And a lot of the articles bring up Nicholas Carr's book, The Shallows, where he argues that the internet is actually changing the way we think.
It's a pretty sobering thought, isn't it?
It is.
The design of these platforms, the way they're constantly feeding us new information, it's like a dopamine slot machine. And it's training our brains to crave novelty and quick hits of satisfaction. But, deep thinking, critical analysis, those things require sustained attention. And that's something we seem to be losing.
Yeah, think about it. Have you ever tried to read a long article or a book after spending an hour scrolling through your social media feed?
Right.
It's hard, right?
It is. You feel that pull to check your phone, to get that next hit of stimulation. It's a real challenge.
And then there's the whole issue of misinformation and fake news, which honestly feels like a bigger and bigger problem every day.
It's a huge problem. And the algorithms on these platforms, well, they're often designed to promote engagement, not accuracy. So sensationalized content, even if it's totally false, it gets more clicks, more shares, and it spreads like wildfire.
Exactly. And now we've got deep fakes and AI-generated content, which makes it even harder to tell what's real and what's not.
Yeah, it's getting tougher and tougher, even for people who are really media savvy. And the scary thing is, once misinformation takes hold, it can be incredibly difficult to correct.
It really can. Another thing the articles touch on, which I think is really important, is the potential decline in face-to-face communication skills. If we're spending so much time interacting online, are we losing some of those subtle cues that are so crucial in real-life conversations?
Right, like body language, tone of voice, all those nonverbal signals that tell us so much about what someone's really thinking or feeling.
Exactly.
Social media allows us to connect with people all over the world, which is amazing. But it's important to remember that it can't fully replace those rich face-to-face interactions where we can truly connect on a deeper level.
And then finally, there's the whole issue of echo chambers and polarization, which, let's be honest, is something we've probably all experienced online. The way these algorithms work, they tend to feed us content that aligns with our existing beliefs.
Right, they create these filter bubbles where we're only exposed to information that reinforces what we already think. And that can lead to confirmation bias, where we become even more entrenched in our own perspectives and less open to different viewpoints.
Yeah, and that's not good for anyone.
It's not. It makes it harder to have productive conversations, to find common ground, to understand where other people are coming from. And it can contribute to the divisions we're seeing in society.
Absolutely. So we've talked about the potential benefits and risks of social media, but the articles also delve into some of the underlying mechanisms at play here, the ways these platforms are affecting us on a psychological and neurological level. And honestly, it's kind of scary. It seems like they're designed to be addictive.
It's true. The use of variable rewards, those unpredictable likes and notifications, it triggers those dopamine pathways in our brains, and that keeps us coming back for more. It's the same kind of mechanism that drives gambling addiction.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way, but it makes sense.
And it can lead to some pretty unhealthy behaviors, compulsive scrolling, difficulty focusing on other tasks, even feelings of anxiety and depression, especially for younger users who are even more susceptible to these kinds of things.
It's definitely something to be aware of. And then, bringing it all back to education, the articles acknowledge that social media has changed how learning happens, especially for younger generations. You've got platforms like YouTube and TikTok where you can find all sorts of educational content. But the problem is, how do you know what's credible?
Right. It's this wild west of information, and it can be really tough to separate fact from fiction.
Yeah.
That's why digital literacy is so important.
Yeah.
We need to teach young people, and honestly, all of us, how to evaluate sources, how to think critically about the information they're consuming, how to spot misinformation. Otherwise, they're just going to get swept away in this tide of unreliable content.
So it seems like the big takeaway here is that social media's impact on our intelligence is really complicated. It's not a simple case of making us smarter or dumber. It's both. And the outcome really depends on how we use these platforms.
I think that's a great summary. Social media has this incredible potential to connect us, to educate us, to empower us. but it also has the potential to distract us, to mislead us, to even harm us.
So what can we do about it? Well, the articles offer some really practical advice. First, be mindful of your consumption habits. Pay attention to how much time you're spending on social media, what kind of content you're engaging with, and how it makes you feel.
Absolutely. And be a critical consumer of information. Fact check everything before you share it, especially if it seems too good to be true or if it confirms your existing biases.
Yeah. And engage in meaningful conversations. Seek out different viewpoints, challenge your own assumptions, and really try to understand where other people are coming from.
I love that. And don't forget to take breaks. Limit your screen time, give your brain a chance to rest and recharge, and make sure you're getting enough face-to-face interaction in the real world.
Right. And finally, diversify your content sources. Don't just rely on your social media feeds for information. Read books, listen to podcasts, seek out different perspectives, and challenge those filter bubbles that the algorithms are trying to create.
I think that's a great place to leave it. It's up to each of us to make sure that social media is a force for good in our lives.
It really is. So here's a final question for you to think about. As you go back to your, probably your social media feeds, what can you do to make sure your online experience is enriching you, not diminishing you?
It's a question worth pondering.
It is. It really is. Okay, everyone. You know that feeling, don't you? That moment when, whatever you're working towards, that big career goal, that personal project that, once got you so fired up.
Yeah.
Even just getting through a day that feels like wading through mud suddenly just seems impossible. And that voice in your head starts whispering about just stopping.
Oh, yeah.
We've all been there.
Absolutely. We all have. And, that's exactly what we're going to be digging into today.
Okay.
So forget those rah-rah pep talks.
Yeah.
We're not about that.
Oh.
We've actually gone through all the material you showed.
Yeah.
Let's just call it your pasted text for now.
Perfect.
To really understand what's actually going on when they get up and go, just gets up and goes.
It really does.
More importantly, we want to give you some real solid strategies, like a real toolkit to find that spark again.
Exactly. Because motivation, it's not a bonfire, is it?
Yeah.
It's not just this endless burning fire.
It flickers.
It flickers. Yeah, sometimes it's blazing. Other times it's just embers. So in this deep dive, our goal is to give you those insights to fan those embers back into a flame.
That's right.
And we're going to do that when you need it most?
Yes.
So why does this happen?
Well, so I think we need to unpack why that initial burst of energy that we get often fades.
Okay.
And your sources actually touch on this.
Yeah.
When we begin something new, there's this rush of dopamine in the brain.
Yeah.
Right? And this is this neurochemical that makes us feel good, excited, optimistic.
Right.
Think about that buzz that you get at the very start of a new project.
Yeah, that initial thrill.
Right.
But that doesn't last, does it?
Well, any really intense feeling that dopamine surge isn't sustainable over the long term.
It's not.
As soon as that novelty kind of wears off, as soon as we hit a snag challenge, that chemical high dips. And what felt exciting now feels like effort.
Yeah, like a drag.
Yeah, just a bit of a drag.
Yeah.
And then think about the impact of setbacks as well.
Okay.
Like a rejection, a failure, just the sense that you're not making any headway. One of your sources actually brought up this concept of learned helplessness.
Okay.
Which is essentially if we experience these repeated failures, we start to think, well, actually, our efforts don't matter.
Right.
So why bother trying?
Yeah, it can feel pointless, can't it?
It can feel pointless, and it's a very powerful demotivator.
It really is. And then you've got the everyday stuff as well, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
You've got deadlines, you've got money worries.
Absolutely.
You might even have people in your life who are not exactly supporting you.
Yeah, exactly. Shall we say they're not fueling our fire?
Yeah. Yeah, and all of that can really amplify that urge to just quit.
Absolutely. I mean, time constraints, financial strain, not having a support system.
Yeah.
These are big drains on our motivation.
They really are.
It's amazing what people manage to do, even with all of that stuff going on.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, and this is really key from your materials. Motivation isn't just some random emotion that shows up or doesn't.
Okay.
It's more like a muscle. It's a skill that can be developed and strengthened by understanding what drains it and what fuels it.
Okay, so we're clearer now on why we feel demotivated, but how do we put the brakes on how do we climb back up that hill.
Yeah.
So the first tool that I'm seeing here in your motivation toolkit is to re-examine your why.
Pre-examine and reframe.
Okay.
Because this is really your anchor, your foundation. The reason that you started doing this in the first place.
Okay.
And when those inevitable tough times hit, this is what keeps you connected to your goal.
But it's not enough just to have a why, is it?
No. It's not enough just to have this vague idea.
You've got to really...
You need to revisit it.
Revisit it, yeah, and be specific about it.
Exactly. And your materials really stress the power of getting very specific.
Yeah.
They even gave a great example, actually.
Full on.
Of shifting from, I want to lose weight.
Yeah.
Which is quite a general thing.
It is very general.
To, I want to lose weight so I can play with my kids in the park without getting winded.
Oh, wow.
So it's connecting it.
Yeah.
To something really specific.
It makes it more compelling, doesn't it?
It makes it tangible. It makes it emotionally significant.
Right.
It connects the present struggle with the outcome.
Yeah.
And research shows that having a clear purpose leads to greater resilience.
Okay, so the actionable step here is to sit down, think about your why.
Yes.
Write it down in detail. Yeah. And then make it visible.
Make it visible. Put it somewhere where you'll see it all the time.
Oh, okay.
On your bathroom mirror as your screensaver.
Yeah.
On your phone, whatever works for you.
Yeah.
And it's not static.
Right.
As you grow and your goals change, your why can evolve as well.
Yeah.
The key is to maintain that connection with it.
Okay, so we've got our why. We know why we're doing it.
Yes.
How do we break it down, though? Because sometimes it just feels too big.
Right. Well, this is the second key strategy from your sources. Break down these big, daunting goals into small, manageable steps, otherwise known as micro goals.
Okay.
Because feeling overwhelmed can be a real motivation killer.
Yeah.
You just think it's so far off, I don't even know where to begin.
I don't know where to start.
And it leads to this kind of paralysis.
I know that feeling so well.
I bet you do.
Yeah. It's like staring at a blank page when you've got to write a novel.
Yes, exactly.
Or a blank canvas when you've got to paint a masterpiece.
Exactly.
Where do you even start?
Well, the solution is to take that big objective and break it down into these tiny, actionable pieces.
Okay.
So instead of write a book, the micro goal would be write 200 words today.
Okay. Yeah.
Instead of run a marathon, the micro goal is run 1 mile without stopping.
I can do that.
Exactly. And they're tangible. They're achievable in the short term.
And you get those small wins, don't you?
Yes, you do. You get these small wins.
And each time you accomplish one, it gives you that little boost of dopamine.
Yes, exactly. They're like positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
And your sources talk about acknowledging and celebrating those wins.
Okay.
You finish those 200 words.
Yeah.
Take a break. Have a reward. Your brain responds to that.
And they all add up, don't they?
They do. They really do. And that cumulative effect of all these small steps is really significant.
Okay. So we've got our why we're breaking things down. What's next?
Well, I think the next thing is embracing the power of routine.
Okay.
Because let's be honest, relying solely on feeling motivated is about as dependable as the weather forecast.
You're not wrong there.
Your mood, your energy levels, they fluctuate.
Yeah.
If you only act when you feel motivated, you're going to be stopping and starting all the time.
So we need to establish habits.
We need to establish consistent habits.
Okay.
They provide the structure that doesn't depend on your feelings.
So what do we pick one thing?
Pick one consistent action that supports your goal.
Okay.
And commit to doing it regularly.
Okay. So for example, what could we do?
Well, you could dedicate 5 minutes each morning to language practice. Or you could spend 10 minutes stretching before bed.
Okay. So small things, but regularly.
Exactly. Consistency, even in small doses, trumps sporadic intensity.
Okay.
James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits, which your sources referenced.
Yeah.
These habits, they compound over time and lead to remarkable progress.
So 5 minutes every day might not feel like much.
No.
But over a year, it could lead to something big.
Yeah, exactly. And the sources also talk about habit stacking.
Okay.
Which is essentially linking the new habit to an existing habit.
Right.
So for example,
yeah,
right after I brush my teeth in the morning, I will do my language practice.
Right.
So it piggybacks on something you already do.
Right.
So your brain doesn't even have to think about it.
Yeah.
It just becomes the next step.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
So even when your motivation dips, your routine will carry you forward.
Okay. So we've talked about we've talked about breaking things down. We've talked about habits. But sometimes that urge to quit isn't about lack of drive. It's about fear of failure.
It is.
It's like we're trying to protect ourselves.
Yes, absolutely.
From being disappointed.
Yeah, the anxiety of putting in all that effort and then not achieving what you want can be very powerful.
It can.
That little voice in your head is saying, what if you try your hardest and you still fail?
Yeah, what if I'm just not good enough?
Exactly.
And then you just don't even start.
Yeah, it's a way of avoiding confronting that failure.
But the thing is, and your sources really highlight, this failure is part of success.
It is.
It's not the opposite.
Right.
It's like a stepping stone.
It is.
Think about all the people who have achieved great things.
Exactly.
They've all failed.
They've all had setbacks along the way.
Yeah. J.K. Rowling, she got tons of rejections before Harry Potter was published.
And Thomas Edison had loads of failed light bulbs.
So many light bulbs.
Yeah, exactly.
So failure is actually feedback.
Yes.
It's a way to learn.
It is.
Not a judgment on you.
Exactly. Your sources encourage us to reframe these setbacks as data points.
Okay.
So you didn't meet a sales target.
Yeah.
Analyze why a presentation didn't resonate.
Yeah.
Get some constructive criticism.
Right.
When you view failure as a teacher, it takes away its power.
It does. And also, what's the regret gonna be?
Yeah.
If I quit now because I'm scared of failing, I might regret that later.
Right.
What if I had just kept going?
Exactly.
So sometimes that fear of not even trying is bigger than the fear of failure.
Absolutely. And that leads us to this fifth strategy,
Right.
which is the importance of who you surround yourself with.
Oh yeah, your people.
Yeah, your people, we're social beings, we're influenced by our environment and the people we spend time with.
You know, if you're around people who are negative or discouraging, it's really hard to stay positive.
It is.
But if you're around enthusiastic and supportive people, it can really lift you up.
It can, and this isn't just anecdotal.
Right.
Your sources actually reference the Framingham Heart Study, which remarkably demonstrated that things like happiness and even motivation can spread through social networks.
Oh, wow.
So it's like contagious positive energy.
So we need to really think about who we're spending time with.
Yeah. Take stock of your social circle.
Yeah.
Who encourages you.
Yeah.
Who celebrates your progress.
Yeah.
And who is critical or discouraging. And you don't have to cut people off.
Right.
But prioritize your time with the good people.
Okay. And what about finding people who are working towards similar goals?
Yes. Find your tribe.
Yeah.
You know, online forums, local clubs, workshops, connect with people who have similar aspirations.
It's really good to not feel alone, isn't it?
Yeah, you get that camaraderie.
Yeah.
You can share your experiences and learn from each other.
Yeah.
You're less likely to feel isolated.
Okay, so that's the people we surround ourselves with. What about the voice in our head?
Ah, yes, the inner critic.
Yeah, because often that's the biggest barrier, isn't it?
It can be.
It's not even external, it's internal.
Yes, that internal voice can be very powerful.
Yeah.
And it can be a source of so much negativity.
Yeah, and especially when you're already feeling demotivated.
Yes.
It's like it just gets louder and it makes you doubt yourself.
Yeah.
It criticizes you and it just tells you to quit.
It says give up.
So how do we quiet that voice?
Well, the first step is to become aware of it.
Okay.
Notice that you're doing it.
Okay.
And your sources say don't try and suppress it.
Right.
Because that can backfire.
It can.
But notice the thoughts without judging them.
Okay.
Just observe them.
Right.
Like clouds passing in the sky.
Okay.
Then you need to challenge them.
Right.
If it says you're going to fail, counter it with something more positive.
Like, I've got this.
Yeah, I've done this before.
I can learn from my mistakes.
I can improve.
Okay, so I'm consciously reframing it.
Yes, and your sources also talk about third-person self-talk.
Okay.
Which is really interesting.
What's that?
Well, instead of saying to yourself, I can do this.
Yeah.
Try saying, you've got this.
Oh, right. You've got this.
Yeah. Research by psychologist Ethan Kross suggests that this creates a psychological distance which reduces stress and actually boosts your resolve.
So it's like you're giving yourself advice.
Exactly. It's like getting advice from yourself, but from a more objective place.
Okay, I like that.
Okay, so we've talked about reframing our thoughts.
Yeah.
And that leads us quite nicely onto this next strategy from your sources, which is rest, don't quit.
Rest, don't quit.
Because sometimes that urge to give up is actually your body and mind telling you they need a break.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
You need to rest.
But that's not a weakness, is it?
It's not. It's essential.
Okay.
Rest is a strategic necessity.
Okay, I like that.
If you push yourself relentlessly when you're burnt out, you're going to be counterproductive.
Okay, so what do we do? Schedule breaks?
Yeah, schedule breaks even before you feel completely depleted.
Right.
Use techniques like the Pomodoro technique, working in intervals with regular breaks. Even just stepping away for a few minutes to move around clear your head
Okay.
can make a big difference.
And if I'm properly burnt out.
If you're in a deeper state of exhaustion,
Yeah.
take a longer break,
Okay.
a day off a weekend
Right.
to disconnect and recharge.
Oh.
And you'll find when you return,
Yeah.
you'll have a fresh perspective.
Okay. So now that we're feeling refreshed, your sources talk about the power of visualization.
Yes.
And not just the finish line,
No.
but the journey.
The journey as well.
So this is more than just wishful thinking then.
It's more than just wishful thinking.
Okay.
There's a real psychological impact. Visualization helps to make your goals feel more tangible, more attainable.
Okay.
Research in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology shows that vividly imagining a successful outcome enhances your motivation and your belief in your ability to achieve it.
So picture yourself having achieved the goal.
Yes.
How does that feel?
Exactly.
Okay, but also picture the steps along the way.
Yes. Visualize the process.
Okay.
Mentally rehearse taking those steps, overcoming obstacles, getting those small wins.
So it makes it feel less abstract and more real.
It makes it feel more within your control.
Okay, so we've got the visualization. What about actually tracking our progress?
Yes, that's a really good one.
It's practical, isn't it?
It is very practical.
But sometimes it's easy to forget to do it.
It is.
And it's really easy to feel like you're not getting anywhere.
Yeah, if you don't have a way to measure it.
If you don't see it.
Yeah.
So track your progress.
Track your progress.
However you want to do it.
Yeah, whether it's through a journal, a spreadsheet, a visual chart.
Yeah.
Whatever works for you.
It's really good to have that visual, isn't it?
It is, because it provides concrete evidence of your efforts and your achievements, no matter how small.
Even the tiny things.
Yes, because seeing those numbers increase, seeing that to-do list shrink can give you a real boost.
It can.
It's a tangible reminder that you are moving forward.
And it also keeps you accountable, doesn't it?
It does, because you can see what's working and what's not.
And it's harder to quit when you can see how far you've come.
It is.
Okay, so final strategy.
Yes.
Accepting that it's okay to pivot.
Yes.
Because sometimes that urge to quit means that the goal is no longer right for us.
Exactly.
Maybe things have changed.
Life changes.
Or our priorities have changed.
Your values, your desires, they evolve.
Yeah, and if we're holding on to a goal that's no longer right for us, it can be really demotivating.
It can be.
So sometimes we need to let go.
Sometimes we need to change direction.
And that's not failure, is it?
It's not. It's self-awareness.
Yeah.
It's courage.
Yeah.
It's strength.
It's growth.
Yeah.
So it's not giving up.
No.
It's having the wisdom to know when something's not right anymore and the courage to redirect our energy.
Exactly.
So if you're in a job that is making you unhappy, it's okay to leave.
It is.
Or if you've had a passion for something for years, but it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
It's okay to move on.
Yes, these are acts of self-respect.
And we deserve to be fulfilled, don't we?
We do.
So there we have it, the complete motivation toolkit.
Yes.
We talked about reconnecting with your, breaking down goals, building routines, reframing failure, surrounding yourself with the right people, mastering your inner dialogue, using rest visualization, tracking your progress, and pivoting when you need to. And the key message here is that motivation, it's not something you're born with or without.
No.
It's a set of strategies that anyone can learn.
Yes.
So the next time you feel like giving up, remember, you don't have to use all of these at once.
Oh.
Just pick one.
Pick one that resonates with you in that moment.
And give it a go.
Yeah, and often just taking that first step forward is enough.
To reignite that spark.
Exactly.
And motivation often follows action.
It does.
We don't have to wait to feel motivated to start.
You don't.
We just need to start.
And you will start to feel more motivated.
And think about the benefits of pushing through. You build resilience.
Yeah.
You cultivate grit.
Yes.
And you develop confidence.
Confidence in your ability to achieve your goals.
So think about people who you really admire, who've achieved great things. Their journey wasn't always easy, was it?
No, it probably wasn't.
They had setbacks. They had doubts.
Yeah.
But they kept going.
They persevered.
And you can too.
Yes, you can.
The only difference between you and them is time and persistence.
That's all. So keep going. Keep fanning those flames.
You've got this.
You've absolutely got this.
All right, welcome to the deep dive, everyone. You know the drill, right? We get right to the good stuff here, the insights you're looking for, the stuff that really matters. And today, Oh boy, we're going deep, deep on something I know a lot of you are thinking about, talking about, maybe even a little worried about. The future of work. And specifically, this whole AI revolution that's happening.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic, no doubt about it. And for good reason.
For good reason. You sent over this article, The Future of Work, How AI Will Change Everything, which, pretty bold title, but I think it gets at something a lot of us are feeling, like there's something big shifting.
Oh, sure.
And our goal today, our mission, is to break this down for you. We're pulling out those key takeaways, the stuff you really need to know about how AI will affect jobs, the skills you're going to need, and what it all means, practically speaking, for your career. We're cutting through the hype and honestly, sometimes the fear-mongering to give you those aha moments and that clarity you came here for.
Exactly. I think what's really interesting about the article you shared is that it tackles both sides of the AI coin. On one hand, yeah, there's the fear of job displacement, but on the other, there's immense potential for growth and efficiency, unlike anything we've really seen before.
Okay, so let's jump in. The big picture is, I think we can all agree, pretty massive, right? AI is not some distant future tech anymore. It's now. It's reshaping entire industries, global economies even, like right before our eyes.
Right. And it's touching every part of our lives in some way.
It really is. I mean, think about it. From the way we shop online, to the healthcare we receive, to how things are made and transported around the world, to the financial markets. It's kind of mind-blowing when you step back and see how pervasive it's becoming.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the challenges too, right? Wrapping our heads around this massive shift that's happening. That's why I appreciate this article, because it gives us a framework to understand what's going on.
Exactly. So let's get specific. How is AI actually changing things on the ground?
Okay, well, let's start with industries where we're already seeing some really tangible impacts. Manufacturing is a prime example, right? Robots and AI-powered systems are making production lines much more efficient. Reducing human error and, even predicting when a machine might break down before it happens.
It's like a whole new level of efficiency.
Exactly. And the article calls these smart factories. It's a pretty good way to describe it. They're using machine learning, basically AI that learns from data, to optimize the entire production process. For example, predictive maintenance. The AI analyzes data coming from sensors on the machines, things like temperature, vibrations, and it can actually spot these subtle patterns that would be nearly impossible for a human to notice. So it can actually predict when maintenance is needed before a piece of equipment fails. What does that mean? Less downtime, less cost, fewer disruptions in the whole supply chain.
And we all benefit from that, right? More efficient manufacturing, lower costs, hopefully. Okay, so it's not just the factory floor. I mean, retail and e-commerce, I feel like I'm seeing this every day. Personalized recommendations when I'm online shopping, inventory management that actually makes sense. The stuff I want is actually in stock when I order it. And those chatbots popping up everywhere to answer my questions 24/7.
Yeah. And those chatbots are getting more sophisticated all the time, right? It's often AI powering those interactions. And what's interesting there is that it's providing a more personalized experience for the shopper while also streamlining things for the business. Those chatbots can handle a lot of the routine questions, freeing up human customer service agents to focus on the more complicated issues, the ones that require, a bit more empathy or a human touch.
Right.
Have you found yourself, surprised by a chatbot recently that actually helped you get something done quickly?
Yeah, sometimes, I have to admit, it's not always perfect, but when it works, it's kind of amazing.
Right.
Healthcare, this was another area that really jumped out at me in the article. I mean, AI helping doctors diagnose patients from medical images, robotic surgery becoming increasingly common, personalized treatment plans based on huge amounts of patient data. It feels like healthcare is on the verge of some pretty radical changes thanks to AI.
It is. It's already happening.
Yeah.
I mean, think about this. You have AI algorithms that can scan thousands of medical images like X-rays or MRIs much faster than a human radiologist ever could.
Yeah.
And they can flag potential issues for a doctor to then review more closely. Now, it's not replacing the doctor's expertise, not at all. But it's giving them this incredibly powerful tool to improve accuracy, maybe catch those critical illnesses early on.
Right.
And then you have robotic surgery. Now, again, this is always under the control of the surgeon, but it allows for these incredibly precise movements, less invasive procedures, which can lead to, faster recovery times.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If you or someone you love needed surgery, wouldn't you want the most precise, least invasive option possible.
Absolutely. Finance, okay, this is a whole other area where AI is making waves. Algorithms that can react in like milliseconds to changes in the market, fraud detection systems that are super fast and accurate, and even automated financial advice becoming more accessible.
Yeah, the financial world is definitely embracing AI in a big way.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it makes sense, right? Finance is all about data, and AI is like the ultimate data crunching machine. It can identify those patterns and make predictions that would be nearly impossible for humans to do.
Right.
Take fraud detection, for example.
Yeah.
AI can analyze huge data sets of transactions and flag those suspicious activities almost instantly. That's a huge security benefit for everyone, for banks, businesses, and ultimately for us as consumers. Our money is safer because of it.
Okay, so AI is changing how things are made, how we shop, how we get treated when we're sick, how our money moves around the world. And let's not forget transportation and logistics. Self-driving vehicles are becoming a reality, right? And then AI optimizing those complex supply chains so goods get where they need to be efficiently and on time.
Yeah, think about all those deliveries you get, the stuff you order online. That's becoming increasingly reliant on AI to make sure things run smoothly. And self-driving vehicles, I know they still have a ways to go before they're, mainstream, but it's a pretty incredible development. Imagine a future where traffic accidents caused by human error are drastically reduced. That's a pretty compelling vision.
It is.
Have you ever thought about, what your commute would be like in a self-driving car? Or how it would change your life if you couldn't drive yourself for whatever reason?
Yeah, it's something I try to imagine, but it's almost hard to wrap my head around how different things could be.
It is. It's a big change. And then, of course, customer service. I mean, we've all interacted with those chatbots and voice recognition systems, right? Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's frustrating.
Yeah, hit or miss, for sure.
But the point is, this is just the beginning. AI is becoming that first point of contact for a lot of companies. And as the technology improves, we're going to see these systems becoming more and more capable of handling our questions and requests.
Makes sense.
Now, the challenge for companies is finding that right balance between automation and, genuine human connection. You don't want to completely eliminate that human element from customer service because sometimes you just need to talk to a person.
Right. I think we've all been there.
What's been your best or worst experience with an AI-powered customer service tool?
Oh, I've got stories. But maybe we'll save those for another time. Okay, so we've talked about how AI is impacting all these different sectors. Now let's get to the heart of the matter. The jobs.
Yeah.
I think this is what a lot of people are worried about, and for good reason. The article talks about both jobs that are at risk due to automation and the new opportunities that are being created. So let's start with the maybe scarier side of things. Okay. What are some of the jobs that are potentially on the chopping block?
Yeah, it's a valid concern. And the article lays it out pretty clearly. Jobs that involve a lot of routine, repetitive tasks are the most vulnerable to automation. Think about data entry clerks, telemarketers, those factory workers doing the same assembly line job over and over, basic customer service roles. These are the jobs that AI can often do more efficiently, let's be honest, at a lower cost.
Makes sense.
I mean, can you think of other jobs you've encountered that just seem really, really repetitive?
Oh, yeah. Tons, unfortunately.
Right.
And those are the ones that, AI could potentially take over.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, and this is where I think things get really interesting, there are all these new opportunities emerging. I mean, the people who build these AI systems, for example.
Exactly. AI specialists, machine learning engineers, data scientists, all these highly skilled roles are in high demand. And it's only going to grow as AI becomes more and more integrated into every aspect of our lives.
The whole new field, basically.
It is. Yeah. And if you have the aptitude for it, it's a pretty exciting field to be in right now.
Right.
I mean, you're literally shaping the future.
Yeah.
And then you have cybersecurity, which is becoming so crucial as we become more reliant on these AI systems and all this data. Someone's got to protect all that.
Right.
Right.
Oh, sure.
And then there are the AI ethics and compliance officers. I mean, this is something the article really highlighted, the need to think about the ethical implications of this technology and make sure it's being used responsibly. That's a whole new job category that didn't even exist a few years ago.
It feels almost like, with great power comes great responsibility kind of thing, right? Like, we need people to be thinking about these big picture ethical questions as we develop AI further.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can't just unleash this technology on the world without thinking about the consequences.
Right.
And it's not just about, preventing harm. It's also about making sure AI is used in a way that benefits everyone, that it's fair and unbiased.
Right.
So these ethical and compliance roles are going to be super important moving forward.
And what about creative fields? The article talks about AI-assisted designers, writers, musicians. I mean, it's not about AI taking over creativity, but more about AI becoming a tool for creative people to use.
Yeah, that's the interesting part. AI can actually help us to be more creative,
Yeah.
We can generate ideas, explore different possibilities, kind of push the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
Have you ever played around with any of these AI tools for creative stuff?
I have, actually. I was skeptical at first, but I have to admit, it's pretty amazing what some of these tools can do. It's not about replacing human creativity, but about augmenting it, giving us new ways to express ourselves.
Right.
And it's not just for professionals either. I mean, anyone can experiment with these tools. There are some really fun and accessible ones out there.
So it's not all doom and gloom, right? Even though some jobs will be lost, there are new ones being created, and even existing jobs are being transformed in interesting ways. But the key takeaway here, it seems to me, is that we need to be adaptable. We need to be willing to learn new skills and embrace these changes.
Absolutely. The one constant in the future of work is going to be change. And those who are adaptable, who are lifelong learners, those are the people who are going to thrive. Right. So let's talk about this idea of AI augmented work. Because it's not just about AI replacing us, right? It's about AI becoming this powerful tool that we can use to do our jobs better, to be more efficient, to be more creative.
Right. And the article has some great examples of this, like doctors using AI to analyze complex medical images.
Yeah. So instead of spending hours poring over scans, the AI can do that initial analysis, highlight potential issues, and then the doctor can step in with their expertise to interpret the findings, make those critical decisions, and most importantly, spend more time with their patients.
And teachers using personalized learning platforms powered by AI. I mean, imagine a system that can tailor the learning experience to each student's individual needs and pace.
That's amazing, right? It is. And it's becoming a reality. AI can help identify those areas where students are struggling and recommend specific resources or activities that can help them catch up. It can even adjust the pace of the lesson based on how well the student is understanding the material. So it's really about creating a more personalized, more effective learning experience for every student.
And software developers, they're using AI tools to write code faster and debug it more efficiently.
Yeah. I mean, coding can be a very time-consuming process, but AI can automate some of those more routine tasks, the stuff that's repetitive or predictable. So that frees up developers to focus on the more complex, creative aspects of their work. They can spend more time innovating and coming up with new solutions.
And even marketing. I mean, AI is being used to analyze consumer behavior and optimize campaigns.
Yeah, marketing's becoming increasingly data-driven, and AI is the perfect tool for that. It can process huge amounts of data, identify those trends and patterns, and then help marketers create campaigns that are more targeted, more effective, and ultimately more successful.
So it seems like the future of work across all these different industries is really going to be about this partnership between humans and AI.
Right. It's not about one replacing the other. It's about finding that sweet spot where they work together, each contributing their unique strengths.
So how do we prepare for this? I mean, it all sounds really exciting, but also a little daunting.
Well, the article really stresses the importance of workforce adaptation and reskilling.
Right.
So for you, the listener, thinking about your own career, this is where the rubber meets the road. You've got to be proactive. You've got to start thinking about what skills you're going to need to thrive in this AI-driven world. And the good news is there are tons of resources available to help you do that.
Okay, like what? Give us some specifics.
Well, first off, STEM education is becoming more and more important. Science, technology, engineering, math, those are the foundational skills for a lot of these emerging AI-related careers. But it's not just for aspiring AI engineers.
Right.
Digital literacy is becoming crucial for pretty much everyone, no matter what field you're in.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, it means having a basic understanding of how computers work, how data is used, how algorithms make decisions. It means being comfortable with technology and being able to adapt to new tools and platforms. And it means having at least a basic understanding of how AI systems work, even if you're not the one building them.
Right. And then there are those soft skills, right? The ones that AI can't replicate so easily.
Exactly. Creativity, emotional intelligence, critical thinking, problem solving, adaptability. These are the skills that are going to be in high demand because they're the skills that make us uniquely human.
And how do we develop those skills? I mean, you can't just download them, right?
You can't, no. but you can practice them, you can cultivate them.
Okay.
Well, for creativity, try taking a class. Experiment with different art forms. Put yourself in situations where you have to think outside the box. For emotional intelligence, practice active listening. Pay attention to your own emotions and how they impact others. Read books or articles about empathy and communication. And for problem solving and adaptability, well, life throws us plenty of curveballs, right?
Right.
So embrace those challenges. See them as opportunities to learn and grow.
I like that.
And remember, this is a lifelong journey. The concept of lifelong learning is so important in this rapidly changing world. It's not about getting a degree and then coasting for the rest of your career. It's about continuously upgrading your skills and knowledge, staying curious, and being willing to learn new things throughout your life.
Right. And the good news is there are so many resources available to help us do that.
Exactly. Online courses, workshops, even AI-powered learning platforms that can personalize the learning experience based on your individual needs and goals.
And it's not just on individuals to figure this all out, right? Companies and governments also have a role to play.
Absolutely.
The article talks about companies investing in reskilling their workforce and governments providing funding and support for training programs.
Right. So if you're in a leadership position or you own a business, think about how you can support your employees in this transition.
Yeah.
Provide them with opportunities to learn about AI, develop new skills, and experiment with these new tools.
Yeah.
And for governments, well, they have a responsibility to ensure that the workforce is prepared for the jobs of the future. That means investing in education and training programs and creating policies that support lifelong learning and reskilling.
So looking ahead, what does this AI-driven future of work actually look like? The article paints a pretty interesting picture, with remote and hybrid work becoming more common.
Yeah, we've already seen a huge shift towards remote work, and AI is only going to accelerate that trend.
Right.
With AI-powered collaboration tools and virtual workspaces, we can work from anywhere in the world and still be productive, still be connected to our teams.
And this idea of human-AI collaboration, that seems to be the core of it all, right?
Absolutely. The future of work isn't about AI taking over. It's about humans and AI working together, leveraging each other's strengths.
Right.
AI can handle those data-intensive tasks, automate the routine stuff, but humans bring creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence to the table. That's the winning combination.
And the gig economy, that's another area that's evolving.
Yeah, AI is making it easier for freelancers to connect with clients and find projects that match their skills. And it's helping companies find the talent they need quickly and efficiently. So it's a win-win.
And AI is even changing how we think about entrepreneurship, right?
Right. It's lowering the barriers to entry for new businesses, making it easier to automate tasks, personalize marketing efforts, and gain insights into customer behavior.
So a lot to unpack here, but if we had to distill it down to a few key takeaways for the listener, what would you say?
I would say, number one, be adaptable. The world of work is changing faster than ever, so be willing to learn new things, embrace new technologies, and be open to new ways of working. Number two, commit to lifelong learning.
Right.
Never stop learning, never stop growing. Make it a habit to seek out new knowledge and skills throughout your life. And number three, be proactive.
Okay.
Don't wait for the future to happen to you. Start thinking about how you can prepare for it now. Identify those skills you need to develop. Explore those online courses. Connect with people in your field who are already using AI and experiment with these new technologies.
That's great advice.
And remember, this is an exciting time. Yes, there are challenges, but there are also incredible opportunities.
I like that perspective.
So embrace the change, be curious, be bold, and I have no doubt you'll thrive in this AI-driven future of work.
Okay, so one final thought for our listeners before we wrap up, and I want to make this really practical, something you can actually do today. Think about one small way you can integrate learning about AI into your routine. Maybe it's reading an article, listening to a podcast, other than this one, taking a short online course, or even just playing around with an AI-powered tool.
Yeah, like one of those AI image generators.
Exactly.
Those are fun.
They are fun. What new skill, even something small, maybe tangentially related to AI, sparks your curiosity?
Yeah.
Because exploring that curiosity could be the key to unlocking a whole new world of possibilities for you in this rapidly evolving job market.
I love that.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And as always, we'll see you next time for another insightful exploration of the topics that matter most.
It seems like everywhere you turn nowadays, there's this idea that you have to think positive to have a good life right.
Yeah.
Like it's the key to it all. And, you see it everywhere from those old self-help books, like that Norman Vincent Peale book, The Power of Positive Thinking. Mm-hmm. That's like way back in the 50s.
Yeah, yeah.
But then you also see it now in all the like mindfulness and manifesting stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
So it makes you kind of wonder, like, is it real?
Yeah.
Does it actually make a difference if you just like change your mindset?
Well, that's what we're going to dive into today.
Okay.
We've got a whole bunch of sources that really explore like the psychology behind it, the science behind it, whether it actually works in practice, and, what the limitations might be.
Right, because you hear all these stories, right?
Yeah.
Like people who say that just like flipping that mental switch, like had changed their entire life.
Yeah.
But then you also have people who are like, this is just a bunch of fluff.
Like, just ignore your problems and just be happy.
Exactly. Yeah, and it can feel kind of dismissive sometimes, can't it?
Totally.
Like, oh, just, put on a happy face and everything will be okay.
Yeah. So let's get past all that surface level stuff.
Yeah, let's get into it.
And figure out what's really going on.
All right. So first of all, what are we even talking about when we say positive thinking?
Right. Good point.
Because the sources are pretty clear that it's not about like pretending bad things aren't happening.
Right.
Or, just slapping a smile on and ignoring the hard stuff.
Yeah. You can't just fake it till you make it right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more about, like actively choosing to focus on the possibilities.
Okay.
And like searching for solutions and recognizing, the strengths that you have.
So it's more about shifting your focus.
Yeah.
Than pretending everything's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Like instead of seeing a setback as like the end of the world, you see it as a chance to learn something.
Right. Or even just remembering to be grateful for the good stuff, even when things are hard. Yes, gratitude, that comes up a lot.
It does.
In these sources. And, a big part of this is that voice we all have in our heads, right?
Oh, yeah, our self-talk.
Yeah, that inner monologue that's constantly running.
That can be brutal.
Oh, it can be, right?
Yeah.
And that really influences how we see ourselves in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So positive thinking becomes about, steering that voice.
Okay.
Shifting it away from negativity and towards something more helpful.
So instead of beating yourself up, you're kind of cheering yourself on.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not about waving a magic wand and changing what's happening around you,
right?
But changing how you respond to it.
Okay, so it's like an inside job first.
Yeah, it starts internally.
Why does that even matter?
That's a good question.
Why does changing your thoughts actually change anything on the outside?
Well, this is where this thing called cognitive behavioral theory, or CBT, comes in.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's pretty well known, and basically what it says is that our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions are all linked.
Okay.
So if you're stuck in these negative thought patterns that can create a downward spiral, you feel bad, you act in ways that aren't helpful, and it just keeps going.
Right, you get trapped.
Yeah, but the cool thing is that it works the other way too.
Okay.
So by actively, questioning those negative thoughts, and replacing them with more positive or even just more realistic ones,
right,
you can break out of that cycle.
Okay.
You can build resilience, increase your motivation, and end up with a more positive overall perspective.
I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
If you're always telling yourself, I can't do this, you're probably not going to try very hard.
Exactly. You're kind of setting yourself up for failure.
Right. It's self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing.
Exactly. And that's another thing that our sources talk about, that if you really believe you're going to succeed, you're more likely to take risks, to persevere when things get tough, and to see and grab opportunities when they come up.
Like you're putting yourself out there more.
Yeah, you're creating a path for yourself.
Okay.
Whereas if you're constantly expecting to fail, you might just, stay stuck and avoid those challenges.
Right. So it's not just about feeling good. It can actually lead to different actions.
Exactly. It can shape your behavior in ways that have real world consequences.
So it's not just fluffy stuff.
No, it's got some teeth to it.
Okay. So what about the science?
Yeah.
Is there actual proof that this positive thinking stuff has benefits?
Well, the research is complicated, but there are some pretty interesting findings.
Like what?
Well, there's this whole field of positive psychology.
Okay.
And researchers like Martin Seligman have shown that there's a clear link between optimism and better mental health, lower stress levels, and just overall greater life satisfaction.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then there's studies that suggest it might even have effects beyond that.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, there's this big study they mentioned in the American Journal of Epidemiology that followed tons of people for over 20 years.
Okay.
And they found that the people who started out more optimistic were significantly less likely to get heart disease.
Wow.
Even after they took into account things like smoking and income.
So it's not just that they were healthier in general.
Right. It seems like optimism itself played a role.
That's wild.
And there's another study in psychosomatic medicine that looked at a bunch of different studies all at once. And it showed that positive emotions like joy and hope were connected to a better functioning immune system.
Wow.
And even living longer.
So we're talking like actual physical health benefits here.
Yeah, it seems like it goes beyond just how we feel.
It's like mind over matter almost.
Yeah, and the placebo effect's another interesting thing to think about here.
Okay, explain that one.
So sometimes when people believe that a treatment is going to work, they actually get better, even if the treatment itself doesn't do anything. Yeah, it's like the power of belief.
Wow.
And that suggests that our minds can have a really strong influence on our bodies.
Okay.
So it's possible that a positive outlook could trigger positive physical changes.
So it's not all just in your head.
No, it could be in your cells too.
That's crazy.
It is pretty wild. But, we have to acknowledge that not all the research is totally on board with just being positive all the time.
Right, like there has to be some downsides.
Yeah, there are definitely some cautions.
Okay, like what?
Well, there was this study in the journal Emotion a while back that found that for people who already had low self-esteem, repeating positive affirmations could actually make them feel worse.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like if you're telling yourself something you don't believe, it just highlights how much you don't believe it.
Right, it's like lying to yourself.
Kinda, yeah. And then there's the danger of becoming too optimistic.
Right.
To the point where you're denying reality.
Oh, yeah, like if you ignore a health problem because you're just trying to stay positive.
Yeah, exactly. That can be really dangerous.
Right, positivity is not a substitute for like actually dealing with stuff.
Yeah, you can't just wish problems away.
So it's not about ignoring the bad stuff. It's more about choosing how you respond to it.
Yeah, choosing a more helpful perspective.
Okay, so let's talk about like real world examples.
Okay.
Like how does this positive thinking stuff actually play out in people's lives?
Well, we see kind of a mixed bag.
Okay.
On one hand, you have those inspiring stories, athletes using visualization to improve their performance, entrepreneurs who credit their success to their unwavering belief.
Like the ones who just never gave up on their dream.
Right. They just kept believing it would happen.
I guess that makes sense. If you don't believe in yourself, no one else will, right?
Exactly. And in our everyday lives, a positive attitude can definitely help with things like relationships and productivity.
Right. Like if you're a manager who focuses on what your team does well, you're probably going to get better results than if you're constantly criticizing them.
Yeah, you create a more supportive environment that way.
And it's probably the same for like students. Right?
Totally. If you see a bad grade as a chance to learn, you're more likely to bounce back.
Than if you just like give up.
Exactly.
But there are also limits, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like positive thinking is not a magic bullet.
Right.
It can't solve every problem, especially problems that are outside of your control.
Like you can't just think your way out of a pandemic, right?
Right. Or a recession or, systemic injustice.
Okay, so it's more about dealing with the things you can control.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tool, not a cure-all.
Okay, so what about this idea of toxic positivity?
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Like, when does positive thinking go too far?
Well, it becomes toxic when it's used to suppress negative emotions.
Yeah.
Like telling someone who's grieving to just look on the bright side.
Yeah, that's not helpful.
No, it's dismissive and invalidates their feelings.
Like saying their feelings aren't real?
Yeah, and some psychologists argue that it's actually healthier to be what they call emotionally agile.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means acknowledging and accepting all your feelings, the good and the bad.
So you're not trying to force yourself to be happy all the time?
Exactly. You're allowing yourself to experience the full spectrum of human emotions.
That sounds a lot healthier.
It probably is. And then there's also the danger of positive thinking leading to unrealistic expectations.
Okay.
Like that whole law of attraction thing.
Oh, yeah. Like if you just visualize what you want hard enough, it'll magically appear.
Yeah. And that can be really misleading.
Right.
Because when those things don't happen, people can end up blaming themselves.
Yeah, like it's their fault for not thinking positively enough.
Exactly. And that can lead to a lot of guilt and despair.
So where does that leave us?
Well, it seems like the key is finding a balance.
Okay.
Like this idea of realistic optimism.
Okay, I like that.
It's about finding that sweet spot between being overly positive and being overly negative.
So you're not denying the bad stuff, but you're also not letting it drag you down.
Exactly. You're acknowledging the challenges, but you're still believing in your ability to cope.
To get through it.
Yeah. And There's this cool theory called the broaden and build theory by Barbara Fredrickson.
Okay.
And it says that positive emotions actually make us think more broadly.
Okay.
We become more creative, more open to new possibilities.
Interesting.
And it also helps us build resources.
Like what?
Like stronger relationships.
Okay.
Which can be really helpful when we're facing tough times.
Yeah, like a support system.
Exactly.
So it's not just about thinking positive, it's about what those positive thoughts allow you to do.
Right. It can kind of snowball into other positive things.
Okay, so it sounds like positive thinking is not a myth, but it's also not a magic solution.
Yeah, it's more like a tool that can help us navigate life's ups and downs.
It's like a lens you can choose to look through.
Yeah, a way of framing things.
But it's still important to be realistic.
Absolutely.
And to take action.
Yeah, it's not just about thinking, it's about doing too.
So I guess the takeaway here is that positive thinking, when it's done thoughtfully, can be really powerful. It can help us be more resilient, maybe even healthier.
Yeah.
And it can help us achieve our goals.
But it has to be combined with action and a realistic outlook.
Right. It's not about ignoring problems. It's about facing them with a different mindset.
Exactly.
So for everyone listening out there, maybe think about this. Where in your life is the line between positive thinking and just avoiding reality? Kind of blurry.
Yeah.
And is there a way you can shift your perspective just a little bit to be more realistically optimistic?
Yeah.
You might be surprised by what happens.
It could make a bigger difference than you think.
Just give it a shot.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so you guys sent in some really interesting stuff for us to dig into. An article all about the psychology of lying. Looks like you want to get to the bottom of why we humans, sometimes bend the truth a little bit or a lot.
And that's exactly what we're going to do today. Sort of a deep dive together. We'll figure out the most important parts and hopefully make sense of it all without getting too bogged down in all the technical terms, of course.
Yeah, no one wants that.
Okay.
So this article you sent, it's pretty comprehensive, covers a lot of ground. It defines lying, digs into the science behind it, talks about the different types of lies, the why, the how, even touches on how we might be able to encourage more honesty.
It does, and that's what we're going to try to do today. Break it all down, give you a clear picture of this very human behavior, something you can really walk away with and maybe even use in your own life.
Sounds good to me. So the article kicks off with what seems like a pretty basic question. What actually is a lie? But it gets complicated pretty quickly. It's not just about saying something that's, factually incorrect.
Right. The key here is intent. It has to be intentional. A lie is a false statement made on purpose with the goal of deceiving someone else. And what's interesting is that deception, it comes in many forms. You have the big, obvious lies, but also little white lies, exaggerations, and even just leaving out important information. The article calls those lies of omission.
Yeah, lies of omission. Those are sneaky. So it's really a whole spectrum of dishonesty, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's not just a social thing either. This article goes into the science of it all, like what's happening in our brains when we're not being truthful.
Yeah, that's what I find really interesting.
Yeah, it turns out lying actually has a biological basis. When we lie, certain parts of the brain light up, specifically the prefrontal cortex, which is kind of like the brain's command center where we make decisions and judgments, and the amygdala, which handles emotions like fear and guilt. Oh, and the limbic system, which is involved in our stress response.
So it's not like our brains just effortlessly come up with lies, huh?
Not at all. It's actually more demanding. Studies using fMRI, which is a way to image brain activity, suggest that lying takes more effort than telling the truth. Think about it. You have to suppress the truth while creating a believable lie at the same time.
Whoa, that's pretty wild. So much for those easy lies, huh?
Exactly. And then the article goes on to categorize different types of lies. It breaks it all down, and that's really helpful, I think, to understand all the nuances. Because lying, it's not just one thing.
Right. It's a whole complicated mess, really. So what are some of these categories?
Well, there are 6 main types that they outline in the article. First, we have the white lies. Those are the little ones we tell to, kind of smooth things over socially, like telling someone you like their cooking, even if you don't.
Yeah, those are the classic examples, usually meant to avoid hurting someone's feelings.
Right. Then you have pathological lies. And those are a bit more complex. It's when someone lies habitually without a clear motive. And the article points out this is often linked to mental health conditions.
Okay, so that's different from just, being a sneaky person.
Yeah, it seems to be more of a deep-seated behavior pattern. Then there are the lies of omission, which we talked about before. That's when you leave out important details to create a misleading impression.
Yeah, like conveniently forgetting to mention that you, accidentally crashed the company car.
Exactly. It's still deceptive, even though you haven't technically said anything untrue. Then there's a category that I think a lot of people immediately think of when they think of lying: lies for personal gain.
Ah, yes. The self-serving ones.
Yeah, these are lies told to get ahead, whether it's for money, social status, or career advancement, like lying on your resume to get a job.
Right, embellishing your qualifications, that kind of thing. So what's next?
Well, then you have compulsive lies. And they're similar to pathological lies, but there's a subtle difference.
What's that?
The article points out that compulsive liars are often aware that they're lying. They might even want to stop, but they just can't seem to help themselves. It's a deeply ingrained habit.
That's interesting. So it's not that they don't know they're lying, it's that they can't control it.
Right. And finally, the last category, these are the ones that can be pretty harmful: deceptive lies.
Those sound serious.
They are. These are the manipulative lies. The ones intended to hurt or exploit someone, like a scammer who tricks people out of their money.
Yeah, those are definitely not good. So that's quite a range of lying behaviors. But I think the big question, the one we're all wondering, is why?
Yeah.
Why do people lie in the first place? The article seems to explore a lot of different motivations.
It does, and there's no single answer. The most straightforward reason is to avoid punishment, whether it's a kid trying not to get grounded or an adult trying to avoid legal trouble.
Makes sense. Fear of consequences is a big motivator.
Absolutely. But sometimes it's about protecting others, not just ourselves.
Okay, how so?
Well, sometimes we lie to shield someone from harm or embarrassment or emotional pain. Like, a doctor who might soften the blow when delivering bad news to a patient.
Right. I can see that. So it's not always selfish. Sometimes it's about protecting the people we care about.
Exactly. But of course, sometimes it is about self-preservation. Sometimes we lie to gain some kind of advantage. Like in a negotiation, you might exaggerate your willingness to walk away to get a better deal.
Oh, yeah. Those strategic lies. It's all about playing the game.
Right. And then there's this whole idea of preserving our self-image. We want to look good in front of others.
Well, I think we've all been there.
Absolutely. We might exaggerate our accomplishments or downplay our failures to make ourselves seem more successful or competent.
It's all about appearances, isn't it?
It is. And then there are those little lies we tell to save face, like, I'm late because of traffic, when really you just overslept.
Oh, absolutely. Classic. I've definitely used that one. Or, my dog ate my homework.
Exactly. Those little social lies we use to avoid awkward situations or embarrassment. And then there's the whole dynamic of lying to fit in, to be accepted by a group.
Right. Peer pressure can be a powerful thing.
It can. We might stretch the truth to gain approval or avoid being ostracized.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. The article also talks about some connections between lying and certain psychological patterns.
It does. But it's important to note that these are just associations, not direct cause and effect relationships. For example, people with certain personality traits might be more prone to certain types of lying, but it's much more complex than that.
Right, so it's not like you can say, oh, this person has this trait, so they must be a liar.
Exactly. Human behavior is just too complicated for that.
So we've talked about all these different types of lies and why people might tell them, but what about spotting them? Can we actually tell when someone is lying to us?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The article does offer some potential indicators, but it's important to remember that there's no foolproof way to detect a lie.
Yeah, people are tricky.
They are. And a lot of the signs that people associate with lying, like avoiding eye contact or fidgeting, can also just be signs of nervousness or anxiety. But there are some things to watch out for. Like what? Well, one thing is inconsistency. If someone's story changes over time, or they give conflicting details, that could be a red flag.
Makes sense. If the story keeps changing, something's probably up.
Right. And then there's body language. We've all heard about things like avoiding eye contact or fidgeting.
Yeah, those are the classic telltale signs, right?
They are. And the article does mention them, along with other things like shifting posture and touching the face more frequently. But again, these can also be signs of general discomfort, not necessarily lying.
So it's all about context.
Exactly. What about speech patterns? Have you ever noticed how someone's voice changes when they're lying?
Sometimes, yeah. They might talk really fast or hesitate a lot.
Right. Changes in speech can definitely be revealing. It could be speaking too fast or too slow, pausing for a long time before answering a question, or even over-explaining things.
Like they're trying too hard to convince you.
Exactly.
The article also mentions something called micro-expressions. What are those?
Oh, those are interesting. They're these very brief, involuntary facial expressions that can betray someone's true emotions, even if they're trying to hide them.
Feels like their face gives them away.
In a way, yeah. It might just be a fleeting flash of sadness or anger or fear, even while they're smiling or trying to appear neutral.
Wow, that's pretty subtle.
It is. It takes a trained eye to spot them. And finally, there are physiological changes that can happen when someone lies.
Like what?
Things like an increased heart rate, sweating, or a dry mouth. It's basically the body's stress response kicking in.
Yeah, I can see how lying could be stressful for some people.
It can be. But again, it's important to remember that these physiological responses can happen in other stressful situations too. So it's not a foolproof sign of lying.
Right. It all comes back to context.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot about how to spot a lie, but what about the ethics of it? Is lying ever okay? The article touches on that too.
It does, and it's a tricky area. Generally speaking, lying is seen as unethical. But the article acknowledges that there are situations where people might feel justified in bending the truth.
Like what?
Well, a classic example is lying to protect someone from harm, like hiding someone from an abuser.
Right. In that case, it seems like most people would agree that lying is the right thing to do.
Exactly. And then there are situations where, maybe withholding information is seen as necessary to prevent panic or maintain stability, like during a crisis.
Okay, so those are more complex situations.
They are. And then there are the little white lies we talked about earlier, the ones we tell to avoid conflict or hurt feelings.
Right, those everyday social lies.
Yeah. Technically, they're still deception, but the intent is usually good and the potential harm is minimal.
So it's all about navigating the complexities of social interaction.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that the article is just presenting these as commonly perceived justifications. It's not necessarily endorsing them.
Right. It's up to each individual to decide what they believe is right or wrong. Okay, so wrapping things up here. Lying is a pretty common human behavior. It's something we all do, to some extent. But the article also offers some suggestions on how we can encourage more honesty.
It does. And they're pretty practical suggestions, like creating an environment where people feel safe to tell the truth, without fear of punishment or judgment.
So basically, building trust.
Exactly. Encouraging open communication, being honest ourselves, and teaching kids about the importance of honesty from a young age.
Those are all great points.
I think so too.
So for our listeners out there, this deep dive into the psychology of lying has shown us that it's a really complex topic. It's not just black and white. There's so many different types of lies and so many reasons why people tell them.
And while we talked about some ways to spot a lie, it's important to remember that there's no magic formula. It's all about context and understanding the nuances of human behavior.
Right. It's not about becoming, a human lie detector. It's about understanding ourselves and the people around us better.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this topic so fascinating.
I agree. So here's something for you all to think about as we wrap up. Considering all the different types of lies and the reasons behind them, what kind of truth teller do you want to be? And how can this knowledge about the psychology of lying help you in your own interactions and choices?
Those are great questions.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure. Hello, and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm your host, Mike, and today we've got a really fascinating deep dive lined up.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one.
I am too. I'm excited to welcome Sarah to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Today we are talking about happiness and...
Ooh, happiness. Who doesn't love a good conversation about happiness?
I mean, it's something we all want, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone wants to be happy.
But I think it's a lot more complicated than people think.
Oh, for sure. It's not just about smiling all the time or, winning the lottery or anything like that.
Yeah, like what actually is happiness?
Right, it's a big question.
So we're going to try to dig into some of that today. Unpack the science behind it a little bit,
right.
Look at, the biological and the psychological factors that contribute to a fulfilling life.
I love that the science of happiness, because it really is a science.
It is. There's so much research out there.
There is, yeah.
So where do we even begin? I guess maybe a good starting point is defining what we mean by happiness, because it's not just one thing, is it?
No, definitely not. And actually, researchers often talk about two different types of happiness.
Okay.
So there's what they call hedonic happiness.
Hedonic happiness.
Yes, basically that kind of immediate pleasure or enjoyment that we get from things.
Okay.
So, think like a really delicious meal or a fun night out with friends.
Like that rush you get when your team scores.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or, that first sip of coffee in the morning.
Yeah. Okay. So those kind of short-term pleasure.
Exactly. And very much driven by those external things, those stimuli,
Okay.
But then there's this other type of happiness that's a bit deeper, and that's called eudaimonic happiness.
Eudaimonic happiness.
Yes, it's a mouthful.
It is.
But this type of happiness is more about meaning and purpose in life. It's about personal growth. It's about feeling like you're contributing to something bigger than yourself.
Okay, so it's less about those external things, those quick hits, and more about something internal.
Exactly. It's about feeling fulfilled.
So is it like the difference between, like a sugary snack that gives you a quick burst of energy versus like a nourishing meal that keeps you going all day?
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
I like that.
So both are good, right? But
absolutely. Both have their place.
Yeah.
But, if you're only ever having those sugary snacks, you're probably not going to feel that great in the long run.
Yeah, and I imagine the research backs that up, right? That the eudaimonic happiness is more associated with long-term well-being.
Exactly. Spot on. Research is showing increasingly that it's really this deeper sense of fulfillment that's linked to better mental and physical health, stronger relationships, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like having a strong foundation versus, just building your house on sand.
I like that analogy.
So we've talked about these two types of happiness, but let's dig into the nitty-gritty a little bit. You mentioned earlier that there's a biological component to happiness, like our bodies are actually involved in this.
Oh, absolutely. Our brains and bodies are incredible. They produce this whole array of chemicals, neurotransmitters, hormones that are constantly influencing our mood and how we experience happiness.
So it's like a chemistry experiment going on inside of us.
Kind of, yeah.
So let's talk about some of these chemicals, because I know there are a few key players. Everyone's heard of dopamine, right? The reward chemical.
Oh, yes. Dopamine is a big one. It plays a crucial role in our brain's reward system.
Okay, so how does that work?
So basically, whenever we achieve a goal or experience something pleasurable, our brain releases dopamine, and that gives us that feeling of satisfaction.
So like when you finally finish that project you've been working on.
Exactly. Or when you eat a piece of chocolate.
Or when you hit a new personal best at the gym.
Yeah, anything that gives you that sense of reward.
Okay.
But what's really fascinating is that research suggests that the anticipation of a reward can sometimes be even more powerful than the reward itself.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like planning that vacation you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Your brain might be buzzing with dopamine even more during the planning stages than when you're actually on the trip.
So it's like the journey is as good as the destination.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, so that's dopamine. What about serotonin?
Serotonin is another crucial neurotransmitter.
Okay.
And it's often called the mood stabilizer because it plays a big role in regulating our mood, sleep, appetite, even social behavior.
Okay, so if you're feeling down or anxious, could that be related to low serotonin levels?
Yeah, potentially low levels of serotonin have been linked to depression and anxiety.
I see.
But the good news is there are lots of natural ways to boost serotonin.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, things like regular exercise, spending time outdoors, getting enough sunlight.
That's good to know.
Even simple things like connecting with loved ones and practicing gratitude can have a positive impact.
So it's not all about medication?
No, not at all, although medication can be helpful in certain cases.
Of course.
But yeah, lifestyle factors play a huge role.
Okay, and I think we've got one more chemical to talk about, oxytocin.
Ah, yes, the love hormone.
The love hormone. Tell us about that.
So oxytocin is released during moments of physical touch, social bonding acts of kindness.
Okay.
And it basically fosters this feeling of trust, connection, and belonging.
So like when you hug someone you care about.
Exactly. Or, when you do something nice for someone and you get that warm, fuzzy feeling inside.
Yeah.
That's oxytocin working its magic.
And that reinforces how important relationships are for our well-being.
Absolutely. Our connections with others are fundamental to our happiness.
Okay, so we've covered dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. Any other key players in the happiness game?
Well, we can't forget about endorphins.
Endorphins, right? The runner's high.
Exactly. Endorphins are our body's natural painkillers and mood boosters.
So they're released when we exercise.
Yes, during physical exertion, but also in response to pain and even laughter.
So a good laugh can actually give you a mood boost.
Absolutely. Laughter is the best medicine, as they say.
And it's all thanks to endorphins.
Exactly.
So it sounds like our bodies are really working hard to keep us happy.
They are, in a way.
And it's amazing how many different factors are involved.
Yeah, it's a complex system, but that's what makes it so fascinating.
So we've covered the biological side of things, but what about the psychological side?
Yeah, so our minds are just as important as our bodies when it comes to happiness.
Okay, and are there like certain frameworks or models that psychologists use to understand happiness?
Absolutely. There are lots of different theories and models, but one that I find particularly helpful is the PERMA model.
PERMA?
Yeah, it's an acronym that stands for 5 key elements of well-being.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So the P stands for positive emotions.
Okay, so experiencing joy, gratitude, hope, all those good feelings.
Exactly.
Okay, what about E?
E is for engagement.
Engagement.
Yeah, it's about being completely absorbed in an activity.
Oh, like when you're so focused on something, you lose track of time.
Exactly. That's often called flow, and it's a really powerful state to be in.
Yeah, I love those moments.
Me too.
Okay, so positive emotions, engagement. What's R?
R is for relationships.
Of course.
Because as we talked about before, our connections with others are absolutely crucial for our well-being.
So nurturing those bonds, spending time with loved ones.
Exactly.
Okay, what about M?
M is for meaning.
Meaning, so having a sense of purpose in life.
Exactly. Feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself, whether that's through your work, your relationships, your hobbies, anything that gives you that sense of why.
I like that. And finally, A?
A is for accomplishment.
Accomplishment. So achieving goals, feeling competent.
Exactly. Those feelings of success and mastery contribute to our overall sense of fulfillment.
So PERMA, positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning accomplishment.
Yes, those are the 5 pillars of well-being according to this model.
And I imagine all of them are important, right?
They are, but research suggests that meaning and engagement tend to be particularly strong predictors of overall life satisfaction.
Interesting. So it's not just about feeling good. It's about feeling like your life has purpose and that you're actively involved in it.
Exactly. It's about living a full and engaged life.
Now, I want to touch on another interesting concept, the hedonic treadmill. Have you heard of this?
Oh yes, the hedonic treadmill. It's a fascinating idea.
So what's the basic premise?
Well, the theory suggests that we humans have a tendency to adapt to both positive and negative events in our lives.
Okay.
So even after a major life change, whether it's good or bad, we tend to eventually return to a relatively stable level of happiness.
So it's like we're on this treadmill where we keep running and running, but we never really get anywhere.
Kind of, yeah. It's like our happiness set point resets.
So like if someone wins the lottery, they might be ecstatic at first.
Right.
But over time, that initial euphoria fades and they end up back at their baseline level of happiness.
Exactly. And the same goes for negative events. You know, after a difficult breakup or a job loss.
Yeah.
We might feel devastated at first.
Yeah.
But eventually the intensity of those feelings tends to lessen and we start to adapt.
So does that mean we're all just stuck at a certain level of happiness no matter what we do?
Well, it's not quite that deterministic. The speed and extent to which we adapt can vary from person to person.
Okay.
And while we might not be able to completely escape the hedonic treadmill, there are things we can do to slow it down, or at least make the ride a bit smoother.
Like what?
Well, practices like gratitude and mindfulness can help us appreciate what we have and savor positive experiences for longer.
Okay, so instead of always chasing the next big thing, we focus on the present moment.
Exactly, and focusing on intrinsic goals.
Yeah.
Those things that are inherently rewarding to us rather than external rewards like money or status can also lead to more lasting satisfaction.
So it's about finding joy in the process rather than just the outcome.
Exactly.
Now, I also want to talk about the happiness set point because I think this ties in with what we've been discussing.
Yes, the happiness set point is another important concept.
So what is it exactly?
Well, research suggests that our baseline level of happiness is partially determined by our genes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's estimated that genetics account for about 50% of our happiness set point.
So some people are just naturally predisposed to be happier than others.
It seems that way.
Okay, what about the other 50%?
Well, external circumstances like our wealth, health, and relationships play a role. They contribute about 10%.
Okay, so our genes and our circumstances make up about 60% of our happiness level.
That's right. But here's the really empowering part. The remaining 40% is thought to be influenced by our intentional activities and the choices we make.
Wow, so almost half of our happiness is within our control.
Exactly.
That's actually really encouraging.
It is. It means that even if we have a genetic predisposition or are facing difficult circumstances, we still have a significant amount of agency in shaping our own well-being.
So let's talk about some of those intentional activities. What are some evidence-based strategies that people can use to boost their happiness?
Well, as we mentioned before, gratitude is a powerful tool, making a conscious effort to appreciate the good things in your life. Even the small things can have a big impact on your overall happiness.
So like keeping a gratitude journal or just taking a few moments each day to reflect on what you're grateful for.
Exactly. And another key strategy is to engage in activities that you find meaningful.
Okay.
Whether that's pursuing a hobby, volunteering for a cause you care about, or doing work that aligns with your values.
So finding your purpose and living in alignment with it.
Exactly.
What about relationships?
Relationships are essential for happiness. We've already talked about that. But it's worth emphasizing, again, spending quality time with loved ones, nurturing those connections is crucial.
And expressing appreciation for those people.
Absolutely.
What about physical health?
Well, taking care of your physical health is also incredibly important. Our minds and bodies are interconnected, so things like regular exercise, a healthy diet, and enough sleep all contribute to our overall well-being.
So it's not just about feeling good mentally, it's also about feeling good physically.
Exactly.
And I imagine mindfulness and meditation can also play a role.
Yes. Mindfulness and meditation are fantastic practices for cultivating a sense of calm and presence. They help us manage stress, regulate our emotions, and even change the structure of our brains in positive ways.
And what about mindset?
Mindset is huge. Cultivating a growth mindset, believing in your ability to learn and grow, can make a big difference in how you approach challenges and setbacks.
So instead of seeing failures as the end of the world, you see them as opportunities for growth.
Exactly.
Now, are there any things that we should try to avoid if we want to be happier?
Yes, there are a few things to watch out for. One is excessive materialism.
Okay.
Always striving for more possessions or comparing yourself to others can lead to dissatisfaction and a sense of never having enough.
So it's about focusing on what truly matters to you rather than getting caught up in the consumerist culture.
Exactly. And speaking of comparison, social comparison, especially on social media, can be a real happiness killer.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the highlight reel and feel like everyone else's life is perfect.
Right. And that can make us feel inadequate or envious.
So maybe taking a break from social media or being more mindful about who you follow could be helpful.
Absolutely.
Any other things to avoid?
Well, spending too much time indoors can also have a negative impact on our mood.
Really?
Yeah. Research has shown that spending time in nature can reduce stress, improve mood, and boost creativity.
So get out there and enjoy the fresh air and sunshine.
Exactly.
And what about acts of kindness?
Oh, acts of kindness are amazing for our happiness. Doing something nice for someone else. Even something small can have a ripple effect, not just on the recipient, but also on ourselves.
So it's like a win-win.
Exactly. And finally, I would say setting and achieving goals can also contribute to our happiness.
So having something to strive for, something to look forward to.
Exactly. It gives us a sense of direction and accomplishment.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's clear that happiness is not some magical destination that we reach.
No, it's definitely not a one-time event.
It's an ongoing journey.
It is, and it's influenced by a complex interplay of factors, our biology, our psychology, our choices.
And while we might not have control over everything, there are so many things we can do to cultivate more happiness in our lives.
Absolutely, and that's what's so empowering.
So Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. This has been a really enlightened conversation.
It's been my pleasure.
And for all of you listening out there, I hope this deep dive has given you some new perspectives and practical tips for creating a more joyful and fulfilling life. And if you enjoyed this exploration into the science of happiness, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more fascinating deep dives.
See you next time. Ever wish you could just skip the small talk
and
know what someone was really thinking? You know, not like actual mind reading, but something almost as cool.
Yeah.
Unlocking that secret code, figuring out body language.
I like that, like a superpower.
Yeah. And it's less about, I don't know, just intuition or something.
Right.
The sources you sent, they make it clear. It's way more about science than you'd think. There are actual cues, things you can learn to recognize.
It's about decoding those silent signals, right? The ones we're all sending out without even realizing it half the time.
Exactly. And that's our mission today, to, give you the tools, to become a body language decoder yourself. We're going to cover a ton: faces, personal space, you name it. Did you know there's a thing called micro expressions? It's crazy the stuff you can pick up on if you know what you're looking for. Imagine, in a meeting or out with friends.
Yeah, even just watching the news.
Oh, totally. You start seeing things in a whole new light, like what's really going on.
It adds a whole other dimension to your understanding, for sure.
Okay, so then why even bother? Why is body language such a big deal?
Well, according to the research, a lot of what we communicate doesn't actually come from the words we say.
Really?
Yeah, depending on the situation, you're looking at something like 70 to even 93% that's nonverbal.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, does that hold up even if it's, just like straightforward information, no emotions or anything?
It's a good question. And the exact numbers, they can definitely shift around depending on the study and what kind of communication we're talking about. Like, yeah, if it's a super technical briefing or something, maybe words matter more.
Right.
But the big idea that nonverbal cues are crucial, especially when you've got emotions involved, that seems pretty solid. Like, think about it if you want to know if someone's being sincere.
You're going to watch their face, listen to their tone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's this anthropologist, Ray Birdwhistle. He did a lot of work on kinesics.
That's the study of
body movement, gestures, all that. And he basically argued that those signals often carry more weight than the actual spoken language.
Whoa. So it's like we're having two conversations at once, one with words, and then this whole other one going on silently.
Pretty much. And even though Albert Mehrabian's that 738-55 rule,
Yeah, I've heard of that.
It's really specific to how we understand feelings, attitudes, but it does illustrate the point, how we say something, the body language that goes with it, that often overpowers the words themselves, especially when it comes to emotions, yeah.
So the takeaway is, even if the exact percentages change, what we don't say is still saying a lot. Now, zooming out a bit, evolutionarily speaking, how do we even get to this point where we're communicating without words?
Well, think about it. Way before we had language as we know it, body language was crucial for survival. For our ancestors, it was how they spotted danger, showed dominance, formed bonds, all that.
Like, you see someone tense up, their face changes, you know something's wrong.
Instantaneously, yeah. It's like a primal response built right in.
Fascinating. So it's universal then, this body language?
Yeah. To a point, yes. There are some expressions, emotions that seem to be hardwired cross-culturally, but culture definitely plays a role too in how things are expressed and understood. That's something we'll definitely get into more later.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's dive into the nitty-gritty. What are the main things we should be looking at when we're trying to, decipher someone's body language?
All right, so the first thing is, it's not about cherry picking, okay? Like, one gesture in isolation might not mean much. You need to look for patterns, clusters of cues that back each other up. So we can start with facial expressions.
Ah, yes. The good old window to the soul.
Right. There's a reason that phrase is so popular. There's this psychologist, Paul Ekman. He did this amazing research. Identified 7 universal emotions. They show up in facial expressions the same way, no matter where you go in the world.
Like?
Happiness, sadness, anger, surprise, fear, disgust, and contempt.
Interesting. So is it just about, is someone smiling or not? Or is there more to it?
It's definitely more nuanced than that. So take a genuine smile, for example. We call it a Duchenne smile. And what happens is, it's not just the corners of your mouth turning up.
Right.
It also involves the muscles around your eyes, those crow's feet wrinkles,
I see. So there's a difference between a real smile and a fake one.
Exactly. And they've actually done studies using fancy tech that can measure the muscle activity so you can tell the difference.
Wow, that's amazing. So what else should we be looking for face-wise?
Well, a furrowed brow can mean a few things. Confusion, worry, anger even. Pursed lips can signal disapproval or tension, even just deep concentration sometimes. Tight jaw, that's often a sign of stress, holding back anger. And then there are micro-expressions.
Those sound intense. What are they exactly?
They're these super fast expressions, like flashes, that happen for just a fraction of a second. They often reveal a hidden emotion before the person can control their face.
Whoa. So if you can spot them,
you're getting a glimpse of their true feelings. But it definitely takes practice.
Okay, moving down from the face, the eyes. They say the eyes are the most expressive part of the face.
Oh, for sure. Direct eye contact. That can be a sign of engagement, feeling confident, or sometimes even aggression, dominance, depending on the situation.
Right. And then if someone's avoiding eye contact, that usually means
discomfort, maybe shyness, or possibly even that they're trying to deceive you, although you always got to factor in cultural norms there.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
What's really fascinating to me is how pupils react.
Pupils.
Yeah. So when something gets us excited or interested, good or bad excitement, our pupils actually get bigger. It's an automatic response tied to our emotions. And then rapid blinking. That can show nervousness or that someone's mind is racing. Steady gaze, on the other hand, that might mean they're really focused or even trying to intimidate you, depending.
So much information packed into just the eyes. Now, what about how we hold our whole body, posture?
Posture is a big one. Think about someone standing tall, shoulders relaxed, chest open.
They seem confident, approachable.
Right. That's an open posture. Now, flip that slumped shoulders, arms crossed tight across the chest.
Closed off.
Yeah, closed posture. Could be insecurity, maybe feeling defensive, not really engaged. Leaning in usually means interest. Leaning back, maybe they want some space, not so into it. And then there's mirroring.
Oh, I've heard of that.
That's when people subconsciously start copying each other's posture, movements. It's a sign of connection, building rapport.
I've definitely noticed that, like when you really click with someone.
Yeah, it happens naturally. Okay, so next, gestures. Hands, arms. How do those play into this whole body language thing?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. Like, what about open palms?
Well, those are usually linked to honesty, sincerity, like, hey, I'm open, nothing to hide. Clenched fists, though, that's more tension, anger, ready to fight.
Makes sense. What about pointing?
Pointing can be used to emphasize, but it can also be seen as aggressive, even accusing, and then self-touching.
Like what?
Touching the face, neck, hair. It's often a way to self-soothe when we're anxious, uncomfortable. There's also a distinction between illustrators, those gestures that go along with our words, and adapters.
Adapters.
Those are the unconscious movements, like fidgeting, adjusting clothes. Those can signal underlying nervousness, maybe even that something's not quite right,
So, like, if someone's fidgeting a lot, that could be a red flag.
It could be.
Huh.
All right, last but not least, personal space. Like, how close someone stands to you.
Yeah, we all have that bubble.
Proxemics is the fancy term. And there are actually different zones of personal space, from intimate, like super close, to social, more for acquaintances. So someone's standing closer than what feels comfortable for your relationship, it could mean they're trying to dominate or be aggressive, or even that they're attracted to you,
Interesting. And if they're way far away?
Could be discomfort, maybe they're just aloof or don't trust you. And of course, cultural norms play a huge role in all this.
Right. So it's like all these different levels of meaning just in how we position ourselves.
Exactly. Oh, and we can't forget about the way we speak, too. The tone, speed, volume, that's all part of body language, too, even though technically it's called paralanguage.
Right. Like a shaky voice.
Could mean fear, nervousness, loud, forceful tone, anger, trying to take charge. Slow, deliberate way of speaking might show thoughtfulness, but also could be a stall tactic if someone's lying, And changes in pitch, how our voice goes up and down, that can reveal a lot about our emotions, too.
It's amazing how many layers there are to communication.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to see it's not about taking one gesture and saying, this means that.
No, absolutely not. Context is everything.
Right. So like arms crossed, maybe they're just cold.
Exactly. You got to look at the whole situation, what's normal for that person, and are there other cues that match up?
It's not like a body language dictionary.
Nope. And then you've got cultural norms, too. What's polite in one place might be rude somewhere else. Like in some East Asian cultures, not making direct eye contact is a sign of respect. But in the West, it can come off as shifty,
Yeah, good point. So you have to know who you're dealing with culturally.
Very important. And it's super helpful to get a sense of someone's baseline behavior. Like, how do they usually sit? How much eye contact do they make? Once you know that, you can spot the changes, the things that might signal a shift in their mood, their intentions. And going back to what we said before, looking for clusters of cues, right? Several things that point in the same direction.
Okay.
It's way more reliable than just one gesture by itself.
Okay, so it's about patterns, context, and cultural background. Now let's talk about specific emotions. Like, what does happiness look like in terms of body language?
So happiness, the main thing, is going to be that genuine smile, the Duchenne smile with the eyes involved. Usually relaxed posture, open gestures, kind of an upbeat vibe overall. But if the smile seems forced or their eyes aren't in it, could be they're hiding something else.
Okay. What about sadness?
Sadness often shows up as slumped shoulders, mouth turned down, movements are slower, less eye contact, their gaze might be down, and sometimes the eyebrows kind of pull together in the middle.
What about when someone's angry?
Anger is usually pretty obvious. Tense jaw, narrowed eyes, that furrowed brow we talked about, maybe even a flushed face. Their posture might stiffen up, gestures are sharp, sudden pointing, fists clenched, and their voice often gets louder, harsher.
Fear. That seems like it would have some strong body language too.
Oh, yeah. Wide eyes, eyebrows raised, mouth open, maybe even gasping for air. They might freeze up or try to back away. Rapid breathing, pale skin, those are all signs of fear.
And disgust. What does that look like?
Think about smelling something awful. That wrinkled nose, eyes squinted, upper lip raised, those are the classic disgust expressions. Might even turn their head away, like they're trying to get away from whatever's disgusting them.
And contempt. That's a little more subtle, right?
It is. Contempt is often shown by a kind of one-sided smirk, just one corner of the mouth lifting. Eyes might narrow a bit, and they might turn their head away slightly, like they think they're better than you.
Last one, surprise. That seems like a quick one.
Yeah, surprise is super short-lived. Eyebrows up, eyes wide, mouth open, but it usually only lasts a few seconds before it changes into something else, depending on what caused the surprise.
Okay, that's really helpful, breaking down each emotion like that. Now let's talk about lying. Can you really tell if someone's lying just by their body language?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, it's more complicated than a lot of people think. There's no one guaranteed tell, like Pinocchio's nose.
Right, so not everyone who avoids eye contact is lying.
Exactly. And just being fidgety doesn't mean someone's dishonest. Nervousness can come from all sorts of things.
So how can you tell? What should you look for?
The biggest clues usually involve a disconnect between what someone's saying and what their body's doing. Like maybe they say they're happy, but there's a flicker of sadness in their face, a micro-expression.
Gotcha. So it's about looking for those mismatches.
Yeah. Also, watch out for overcompensating, like trying too hard to appear honest by staring you down or being super still. Hesitations in their speech, sudden changes in posture, a lot of self-touching those can all be signs that someone's uncomfortable with the truth. And do their gestures, their facial expressions match what they're saying? Like if they're describing something sad, but their tone is cheerful and they're relaxed, something might be off.
So again, it's about those inconsistencies more than any one specific gesture.
Exactly. And it's super important to remember that what's considered deceptive in one culture might be totally normal in another. So you always have to take that into account.
Right. Can't just assume everyone follows the same rules.
No.
So we've covered what to look for. What about actually getting better at this? Are there exercises people can do?
Totally. Like anything, practice makes perfect. One great tip, start paying attention to the people you see regularly. Get a sense of their baseline, like how do they usually stand, what are their typical gestures, all that. Then, if something changes, you'll notice.
Become a people watcher.
Basically, yeah. Go to a park, a cafe, whatever, and just observe people. Try to figure out their emotions, their relationships, based on their body language.
Interesting. What else?
Try mirroring someone subtly when you're talking to them.
Oh, like we talked about earlier.
Yep. Helps build rapport, but also makes you more aware of those cues. And ask calibration questions.
Calibration questions.
Questions where you already know the answer. That way, you can see how someone acts when they have no reason to lie. Gives you a benchmark for their truthful behavior. You can even record yourself during conversations. You might be surprised what you notice.
Like things you're doing that you didn't even realize.
Exactly. And lastly, try watching a show or movie with the sound off. Just focus on the body language, see if you can guess what's going on. Then turn the sound back on and see how well you did.
Cool. So now switching gears a bit, how does knowing all this actually help us in real life?
Well, in relationships, it can make you more empathetic. You'll start to pick up on unspoken needs, see when someone's upset, even if they don't say it.
It's huge.
At work, it can boost your communication skills. You'll be able to tell if your audience is engaged or if they're tuning you out.
And you said negotiations too.
Oh, yeah. It can be really helpful in negotiations. You can get a sense of someone's true position, see if they're bluffing. And just in general, you start to understand social dynamics better. Who's in charge, who's following, who's interested, who's not.
Makes sense. So basically, it makes you more emotionally intelligent. Now, what about the science behind all this? We touched on it briefly earlier, but what's actually happening in our brains when we process body language?
So there are these things called mirror neurons, right? And they fire not just when we do something, but when we see someone else doing it.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like our brain is creating a simulation so we can kind of feel what they're feeling. That's a big part how we understand nonverbal cues. And then there's the amygdala, that part of the brain that deals with emotions. It's super sensitive to body language. And it can process those signals even before we're consciously aware of them.
So that's where those gut feelings come from.
Could be, yeah. And research has even shown that different parts of the brain specialize in reading different aspects of body language. It's crazy complex.
Okay, so now that we're getting the hang of this, are there any common mistakes we should watch out for?
Oh, definitely. One big one is overanalyzing. Like, not every little movement means something major. Don't read too much into every twitch and fidget. And confirmation bias is another danger.
Confirmation bias.
It's when you look for evidence that supports what you already believe, and you ignore the stuff that contradicts it, you got to stay objective when you're reading body language. And don't forget that words still matter. Body language gives you context, nuance, but it doesn't replace what people actually say.
Good point. So basically, don't jump to conclusions and don't ignore the verbal side of things.
Exactly. Now, if you want to take it to the next level, there are even more subtle cues you can start to pick up on.
Oh, like what?
Well, like which way someone's feet are pointed. That can often show you where they really want to go, even if their body's facing you. Breathing patterns, too shallow, fast breaths, probably anxious, slow, deep breaths, more relaxed. Look for changes in skin tone, like blushing. That could be embarrassment or anger. Even little things, like someone constantly adjusting their collar, might mean they're uncomfortable, maybe not being totally truthful. And handshakes.
Oh yeah, those are important.
A firm handshake, that's usually confidence. Limp handshake, maybe insecurity. There's a whole world of meaning there, too.
Okay, so putting it all together, give me an example, like a real-life situation where all this comes into play.
Sure. Imagine you're in a meeting, right? And your colleague's presenting a new idea. They seem confident, good eye contact, all that. But they keep touching their neck, shifting their weight. Their smile doesn't quite reach their eyes, and their feet are pointed towards the door. And when you ask them a tough question, their voice gets higher. They start saying, and a lot.
I see.
Now, any one of those things on its own might not mean much, but taken together, it paints a different picture.
Yeah, like they're not as confident as they're trying to appear.
Right. They're nervous, maybe not sure about their own idea, and probably just want to get out of there. So by looking at the whole package, you get a much better understanding of what's really going on.
That's such a good example. So as we wrap up this deep dive into body language, what's the most important thing you want people to remember?
I think the main takeaway is that understanding body language, it's a skill anyone can learn. It's not just about memorizing a bunch of gestures, though. It's about paying attention, practicing, considering the whole context.
And it makes you a better communicator, right? More in tune with people.
Absolutely. So for anyone who wants to start applying this, where should they begin?
Yeah, what's a good first step?
Just pick one or two things to focus on, like facial expressions or posture. Start observing those in your everyday interactions. The more you do it, the more natural it'll become.
Small steps.
Yep.
And the payoff.
You start to see beyond the words, you know? You get those deeper insights into what people are really thinking and feeling. And that can transform your relationships, your work, everything.
Wow, that's powerful. So as you go about your day, think about all the ways you communicated without even saying a word. And maybe the messages you might have missed. What will you see differently now?
That's a great question to ponder.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive.